Happy Sunday. It's a post-Thanksgiving Sunday here in the United States of America, and hopefully, unlike some of my theistic friends, hopefully you don't think that atheists are somehow sad and dour because we don't have a God to thank. Instead, we're the type of people who thank the people who actually did the work, the people who worked on Thanksgiving, even the ones that supplied me with the worst Thanksgiving meal I've had in living memory.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was terrible. Oh my gosh. It was so bad that today for lunch, Arden made a Thanksgiving in your mouth croissant that was turkey and dressing and cranberry sauce and gravy all inside of a croissant. It was outstanding, especially compared to the crap that we had at the other place. But we are thankful to, as I pointed out, I'm thankful to my family members, both 2 and 4, my family members, and the first responders and the doctors who, figured out what was wrong with me on some occasion, and the doctor in particular who did the triple bypass on my heart, making me better today than I was before, along with a handful of friends of ours that we've been very fortunate to visit with over this holiday season. And now I get to do a Sunday show with Forrest. How fucking cool is my life?
Exciting day.
Oh, and you just defended your thesis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just finished with that. Now I'm working on a big charity event, setting up to go to the Galapagos for a few weeks in the summer, planning things for that. Got a bunch of conventions next year, working on like 80 different projects all at the same time as usual. Just life is weird, man. Life's real weird, but real good.
Well, in the last couple of weeks, I've done more shows than normal, and this week is going to continue that trend. So if you're not familiar, this is the Sunday Show, the premier #1 super awesome show on the line, but it's not the best or even the most important show on the line. Some of the better shows, maybe you haven't had a chance to check out, because we do the Sunday Show on Sunday, we do Skeptalk on Monday, we do Dying Out Loud with Dave Warnock on Tuesday, I do my show, The Hang Up, on Wednesday nights. On Thursday, we have the Transatlantic Call-In Show, and in between those shows and at various times, there's also some random 'cause I wannas, and we are setting up new debate shows. There's also interview shows, hostilities that come out on occasion. Endboss is in the process of reviewing candidates. So for all of you who submitted your application to Endboss, by the way, you can go to qnaline.com and there'll be a submission there to apply for Endboss. We are still looking for more submissions. We got a couple of not good submissions, and then a few people that we're getting ready to reach out to and submit. It's an interesting format because you've got 1 hour and you're running the gauntlet instead of a normal debate where it's going to be you present your case, somebody else presents their case, and you go back and forth and blah, blah, blah. In this case, you're going to get an opening time to present your case to the Endboss and everybody watching. And then there'll be a period of time where you basically run a gauntlet of questions provided by the audience watching, just right off the bat, leading all the way up to a final segment where whoever the Endboss is, sometimes it's going to be me, sometimes it might be Forrest, sometimes it might be Arden, whoever knows, then the Endboss, who's been sitting here taking notes the whole time and steering and sending the audience questions, will put together a final group of questions to hopefully get to the heart of the issue that you can then answer, and then you will get the last word in that hour, except for the obligatory that ends today's Endboss. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, blah, 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 blah. But you will get the last word relevant to that. And that's the format we're looking at. So if you want something like that, by all means, go over there and apply for that as well. Also,
will there be like a chat poll at the end or anything to let people know, or like for people can vote whether or not the challenge was successful?
It wouldn't be fair because it's largely our audience, and it would.
That's true. That's true.
And also, I generally despise the notion of doing voting, because I don't tend to look at debates in terms of win lose. If I did,
Right.
I'd never lose, but also I'd never win. It's amusing that way. But yeah, we got all that stuff going on, so you can apply there as well. Huge thank you to everybody who's supporting this network on Patreon and on YouTube. You can become all of the links, by the way, are down below. There's a link there to become a channel member, a link to go to patreon.com/call the line. And on most of the shows, and by the way, everything on the line is a live show with calls, which is what we're all about. But on most of the shows, we'll take super chats and engage and answer those questions at the end of it. This is the one show where we don't do super chats, but you should absolutely super chat anyway, because if I see it while we're in the midst of something, I'll go after it. I don't care. It's a great opportunity for you to get involved in the show. Mostly though, we are grateful to people who spread the information about the show, watch the show, and let people know that they need to call in. If you've been accused of transphobia and you're proud of it or ashamed of it or confused by it, you need to call into the Transatlantic Call-In Show. If you are confused about science and skepticism and which way to turn and who to believe on issues related to science and skepticism, you need to be tuning in to Skeptalk on Mondays. If you are a compassionate human being who wants to hear from people who are facing incredibly difficult end-of-life issues, Tuesday's the day to tune in to Dave Warnock on Dying Out Loud. And if you just want to waste some time on a Wednesday with a dipshit that never knows what he's going to talk about or what he's hung up on until right before showtime, you should tune into my show to hang up on Wednesdays. All of those, I mean, it's so much fun. We did, J-Mike was supposed to be on a couple weeks ago, but unfortunately, due to jury duty thing, we ended up changing that. So I did a solo episode of The Hang Up, which in 20 years, I've done, I don't know how many solo shows. It's just fine. We had so much fun. We took a whole bunch of super chats. We got a lot of good kind of questions and everything else. And this coming Wednesday, in 3 days, there's a lovely lady down the hall who's producing or co-producing right now. Wait, are you producing or is Morgan?
It's just me today.
I'm not doing either. Oh, her. Okay.
Just Arden. Yes, honey. I'm talking to my other honey. Anyway, Wednesday is Arden's birthday. So all of you who have not been necessarily hashtag Team Arden before, get yourself on the hashtag Team Arden bandwagon. Tune in on Wednesday night where my hang up is going to be her, and her hang up is going to be all of our animals. We're going to talk snakes, geckos. We're going to talk political stuff. We'll take religious callers, anything and everything. But when I said that I was doing more shows than normal, this is not going to be the regular. If you're already tired of me, enjoy your holiday off. But I'm doing the show today. I think I'm doing Skeptalk tomorrow with Aron. I'm not doing Dying Out Loud on Tuesday because I just did Dying Out Loud last Tuesday. And then so Wednesday, Arden and I will do her birthday show. That's, awesome. I think, all the announcements.
It's amazing that you remember all the announcements. I blow it every single time I'm hosting on this channel.
Oh, I have definitely forgotten something, and Arden will message me in just a minute to let me know what it was. And if she doesn't, Jimmy will be, God damn it, how many times have I told you you need to promote this? But I think I might have got to almost everything today.
The other day, Jimmy was berating me for not, remembering the announcements properly. And he was like, or you're either going to forget or you're going to say, hi, my name is your name. And I'm joined today by co-host on date. And I was like, that sounds so stupid. He's like, you did that. And I'm like, I don't remember that, but that sounds exactly like something I would do.
I'm just glad. So in all of these, the one thing that surprised me is not that I remember the announcements and things when I remember them, because Arden or somebody will remind me, she'll send me a message, and Jimmy will send me a message, whatever. What shocks me is how I remember which show I'm on.
Yeah. You just do this all the time.
For decades, I was on another show on another network, but I was also, we don't have to do it. I was on the Atheist Experience for many, many, many years, but in addition, the ACA produced a whole bunch of other shows. And so I would end up on nonprofits. Hell, for a year or two, it was just me and Dennis on nonprofits, doing it from my tiny little one-room apartment. And then, you'd shift over and after nonprofits, you'd end up doing, Talk Heathen or whatever. They even got me on to do secular sexuality on occasion. And I'm like, I don't know why anybody wants me on a sex show, but I'll talk about it. But yeah, it's It's good. And in your case, I have to think twice because you and I don't get to do the Sunday show that often. And here you are.
Right.
We should fix
It's a
that.
rare occasion. It's a rare treat. Yeah,
we
let's
have
do
callers, including theistic callers. So it is a live call-in show. Remember this. Genuinely, we're going to ask questions. We are probably going to interrupt. We want to know what you believe and why. Getting some base definition is very useful. The why is the important part, and perhaps more important than that is why you think we should believe it, why you think other people should share this belief. So it's not, if you're just calling in to say, I'm convinced because I'm convinced, well, hooray, good for you. We can't do anything with that information. We need something, some reason why you think we should be convinced. Please, I will try my best to exercise patience, especially because we know there's a delay and there's audio issues, and just inevitable with the internet. I will probably make judicious use of the mute button. All we really want to do is figure out, can we understand why you believe? And I'll tell you, I haven't mentioned his name, but Forrest will know who I'm talking about, so don't mention his name. There's a YouTuber who makes content that I watch regularly, who is a brilliant biology zoologist communicator, who also happens to be a Mormon, and I don't understand it. And so I am desperate to reach out in private. I'm not putting him on blast. I'm not going to invite him on for a bit. I just genuinely like this guy. And I need to know how somebody can know and understand so much about biology and yet still not just be theistic, but a Mormon, which I think is, I'm not trying to just be offensive for the sake of offense. I think Mormonism is one of the most obviously bullshit made up of all of the religions. I mean, we know the creator was a con artist, and yet I don't know. It's a
don't you know,
thing.
When you read the Holy Scriptures out of a hat, and then you read them out of the hat again, but they're slightly different. That's proof that that there was an angel in the hat.
Yeah, the angel realized quickly he could have phrased it slightly differently the first time. So
just better.
All right, so we got Theus waiting, and let's get started. In calling from New Mexico, we have Gina. Her. Welcome to the line, Gina. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Not too bad. It says here you have spiritual gifts.
Yeah. Can you hear me pretty well? I just wanted to ask you that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, can I just give you a little bit of my background first?
Yeah. If you, I mean, we don't need a life story, but you can do a little background because I want to know about your spiritual gifts. But go ahead.
Yeah. No. Well, it's real short.
Go for it.
Whatever's relevant.
Was raised Catholic. I'm sorry.
I just said whatever's relevant, whatever you think is meaningful to the story.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I was raised Catholic. My husband was too. Basically, just went to church. It was kind of more of like just tradition for me. Wasn't really something meaningful, I guess. Same with my parents, raised Catholic. It was just more of a tradition. And so, same with us. We have two grown kids, and our kids were raised the same way. It just became more of a tradition for the whole family. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to really, what was going on in the church. So about 6 years ago, I just started to have, I knew things before they would occur. And world events, local events, things like that. I didn't understand what was going on. I wouldn't consider myself spiritual even in that respect. So someone suggested, go talk to this one. We have a pastor friend, and I went and talked to him, and he says, maybe it sounds like a spiritual gift kind of thing. And so I had never, ever opened the Bible before. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So that's part of the background too. Never had read the Bible or opened it. Never was encouraged to do so in the Catholic Church. We didn't do it as a family. So going into this, I know nothing about the Bible. I had never read it. So talking to this pastor, I had never heard of spiritual gifts. This was all new to me. So he's pointing me to the gifts, what they are, in the book of Corinthians. He's trying to help me understand what the heck they are. And so, I mean, just along this journey, it's really been only occurring for the last 6 years. And many things has been like, as I said, knowing things like world events. So it turned out I started getting dreams and visions, and then sort of just knowing things before they would occur, depending on what it was. Some of it was just family situations or maybe even world events. Again, I didn't know how would I know these things.
Hey, Gina. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're getting there or not, but like you've said things like world events and family things and stuff.
Yeah.
But like I don't know what that means, because like I could say world events and I could mean specifically the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, or I could mean some war happened.
Yeah.
And it somewhere in the middle, you know? Like what specific are some examples of some things that you've predicted?
Okay. Well, I wouldn't say I predicted, but I'll give you specifics.
Or foresaw, you could say. I don't know, whatever you think.
Okay. One was we had, this was in like 2017. I was at work, and I work on an Air Force base. And as I was leaving the base to go to another building for a meeting. And as I was leaving, this is what the knowledge I was told. I was told the base is going on lockdown and there's an active shooter. In that moment, I didn't know what to do with that information. I just went along my way, went into my meeting room, and we have these tone alert radios on the wall that indicate, if there's something going on, they'll lock down the building. Well, within a few minutes of me getting into the meeting, the radios went on and said that there's an active shooter in the area, and it was not a drill. So our building was on lockdown, and so was the base. And they said there was an active shooter. And I was sitting there not knowing, like, how did I know that before it even occurred? There's no way I would have known that. And again, I didn't know how I even knew that. This was in the very beginning of this. And then
to be fair,
another incident shortly after that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, continue. I'll get there.
Okay. Another one was my husband's uncle was in the hospital, and he was on hospice, and he was dying. And about, 2 weeks before he died, I was told the day he was going to die, like the date. And he died on that date, and nobody knew when on a specific date he was going to die. But again, what are the odds that I would know the date before he died? Things like that. And so another one was, so then as time went on, I started to learn more and more, like maybe who was talking, God versus, maybe a dead relative. Because I didn't know like what the spiritual world was all about. I'm still trying to understand all these things. But anyway, that pastor had pointed me to something called the word of knowledge. And so one day, I woke up and I was told this was the knowledge that someone was considering suicide. And we were sitting down for breakfast, and the next moment, my daughter gets a text on her phone saying her friend was considering suicide. He said he was at his grandma's house and he had a bottle of pills and he wanted to kill himself. Eventually, she ended up going over there and talking to him. But long story short, how would I know that in advance?
Mm-hmm.
And what are the odds that he would get a text after that word came to me? And then same thing with my niece. My niece has two teen boys. And so about a year after
pause,
that,
Gina.
Very similar message.
Gina, let's pause.
It was about suicide.
Gina,
okay.
Gina, let's pause and take a look at some of this stuff. So
Okay.
I have a ton of questions, but there were specific things about how
Sure.
you phrase stuff. You're like, how would I know? Well, you didn't know.
Mhm.
You got the impression of something or word, or you said several times spoke. So are you hearing an audible voice with a clear message, or do you get an impression?
It's actually been both. It depends on what is being said, I guess. Um, yeah, there's been audibles, and then yeah, I guess what you'd call like impressions, like knowledge is put there, or sometimes it's through a dream.
Okay.
Maybe there's
So
information passed in a dream.
sure. So let's, if I'm trying to be as charitable as possible, either through a dream or sometimes through an audible, like hearing words, and I'd love to know what the heck that sounds like, or sometimes through an impression. So by three different types of mechanisms, you get what this pastor friend is calling a word of knowledge. And then your question is, how did I know that? Well, you didn't. How many times has that happened where the thing that you got the bit of knowledge about didn't come true?
I don't know because, to be honest, I haven't taken statistics on it.
You don't keep a
It's not
diary
Has
like
of these
has
messages?
that happened? But has that ever happened? Can you think
wait,
of even one time?
that it didn't happen.
Yeah, that you got a piece of knowledge on
Mm,
something and it ended up not being real.
I- to be honest, I don't know offhand.
Do
There's just
you
been
not keep
so
a
many
diary of these?
things that have gone on. A lot of it has been not necessarily as the time has gone on. It's just been more family related, and then um, just more
Gina?
in my life.
Yeah. So do you why don't you keep a diary of these so that then you can say, okay, I got this word of knowledge, this impression at on this date and this time, and then at a later time, that's when it appears to come true. Then you would have at least something, because right now you can't even demonstrate that you ever got any sort of advanced knowledge. We just have to take your word for it. And
Mm.
we don't know how often
Right?
you're
No, I get
like,
that. Yeah.
hang on. We also have no way of telling how often you're right or not. But you started off with the call by saying these are spiritual gifts. Um, what would possibly be the purpose? I'm assuming you're guessing that these things come from a God. So, what purpose would a
Yeah.
God have to give you vague impressions of things that are sometimes correct and sometimes not?
Okay. I can. I was going to lead you that way, but I kind of wanted to paint a picture of that first. But I will answer that question. Um, Along the way, some of the knowledge passed to me has pointed me out of the Catholic Church and into a church where I can learn about the Bible. That's what some of the audibles have been, pointing me to specifically to the Bible, reading the Bible, telling me to understand what's in it, telling me to understand, learning more about Jesus and God and the Holy Spirit. Um, so some of the messages have been pointing me to specific people in my life, mostly family members, who we would call unsaved. Um, I'm gonna say, yeah, God telling me to go talk to one of my aunts about Jesus. She was unsaved. Tells me she's spiritually dead. Um, that's been now pointing me to many people in my family and neighbors and friends, and that's where a lot of this has gone. Now, ordinarily, I'm going to tell you this: I'm not the type of person who talks to religion about religion to most anyone. It's just not my style. If you go back 6 years, I could give a crap about
Uh,
what people's religions are, what their
I don't.
beliefs
I'm sorry,
None of
are.
that
Gina.
matters.
Gina,
It's
None
not
of that
something.
matters.
I'm
What?
sorry, Gina. If I can just kind of
Sorry.
focus in a little bit more here. You
Okay.
we asked you what you're talking about in terms of the I'll use the word visions briefly, but please understand, I'm not trying to straw man what you're saying. I understand you're talking about all these different ways you're seeing these.
Yeah.
You're getting this foresight, right? We asked you what you mean by that.
Okay.
And you gave us some examples of some family members. You gave us some example of people around you, a base that you once lived on where you predicted there might be a shooting event and whatever. Now you're talking about when Matt asked specifically, like, what's the purpose of this? You said, oh, well, I'm helping people with their religion. And I left the Catholic Church and started studying the Bible. I'm just curious to know why that's the end game here. You said you were able to predict a mass shooting, or sorry, not a mass shooting, but an active shooter event at a military base. Here in America, in this year, there have been 531 mass shootings where over 4 people were wounded or killed. Just a little bit ago, let's see here. What's this big one here? I've got a list of them here. On October 25th, 19 people were killed and 13 more were injured in Maine. Why didn't you get prediction about any of those? Why didn't you stop any of those things from happening? Why is the prediction more dedicated towards helping people come to the religion that you also believe in, as opposed to stopping actual danger and actual life-threatening issues that are around us every single day here in the U.S.?
Right. I get that. I've had those same thoughts. I honestly have. I don't understand the mind of God. I obviously who does. I think this is okay. This part is my opinion. In the beginning, when I was getting a lot of this, I think this is just this is my opinion. I'd ask why. Why do I need to know that information? Why is that valid? I would ask that of myself, of what was going on. And the only thing I could come to conclusion about why would I be told certain things like that is for God to show that he's the one predicting, or he's the one, he can precisely say this person was going to die on this date. I think
that's not what happened.
God was just trying to tell me or paint a picture.
Except that's not what happened. At no point in any of this do you have any evidence or reason that God has done anything or said anything. Even if you were getting messages, even if you were hearing audible voices, you have nothing that tells you that it's God.
Then how else do I know? Okay. Here's another story.
I don't want another story. I'm going to be honest with you. No, I don't. I would like to know, like, Matt just asked, how do you know it's God? And you said, well, where else is it coming from? And that right there is painting a picture of why this is such a problem for us. Earlier on, we asked, how many times does this not work? And you said, I don't know, but I know when it does work. That's the definition of confirmation bias. And then you said, well, I don't know where else it could come from, which is the definition of the argument from ignorance. You're saying, I don't have any better explanation, and it seems like it might be this, so that's what I'm going with. And you're not checking, like, what? Let's say you do actually have these prophetic, instances where you're able to see, what if Satan's doing it? What if neither God nor Satan is real and it's fucking Hanuman or some other god that's doing it? What if you actually have some weird lump in your brain that's causing you to be able to tap into some ethereal plane that we don't know? What if it's a million other magical or non-magical things? Or what if it's non-existent and it's a hallucination and you actually didn't have that happen, but you seem to remember it in the aftermath? What if a million other options are there? And instead, you're jumping to, well, I believe in this God, so that's what it must be. And there's no other reason for it to be anything else.
But there's more, because
there is more. I'm being succinct.
You're sitting here you're flailing around, wondering why God would give you this ability or these messages when you have no evidence that God gave you any ability or any messages. And so for a moment, you infer that God wanted you out of the Catholic Church and wants you to help other people leave the Catholic Church. But if that were the goal, why couldn't God just tell all of those people to leave the Catholic Church? There's no reason why the all-powerful, all-knowing supposed governor creator of the universe needs to give you vague messages that you don't even bother to track, that you can't or don't currently know are from him, in order to get you out of the Catholic Church and convince other people to leave. So even your attempted way of making sense of this doesn't make sense. So far, the only thing that makes sense is that you think you're getting impressions of things, And some of them, at a rate we don't know, are coming true or happening for reasons we don't know. That's all we've got. We can't even prove that any of that happened.
If the message, if the plan really was to help people leave the Catholic Church, do you know who would be a really good person to get this gift? The Pope.
Yeah, the Pope.
Give it to the Pope. If the Pope started having these visions and these ideas and this voice in their head, that would be great. Gina from New Mexico, maybe not as influential in terms of like pulling people away from the Catholic Church. You know what I mean?
Although I'm sure I would probably like you better than I like most of the popes.
Right.
Well, I didn't say that was the goal of God to pull away people from that church. I'm just saying I didn't know.
You kind of hinted that was one of your suspicions,
Bible.
but you kind of hinted that was one of your suspicions because it drew you away from the Catholic Church. If God is giving you messages that draw you away from the Catholic Church, and then you're sharing those to draw the people away, if that's not God's goal, then God fucked up, didn't he?
No, because I didn't say that was the goal.
If God gave you messages, hang on, listen to me very carefully,
maybe that was
Gina.
inferred.
Gina, just listen to me. If God gave you messages that resulted in you leaving the Catholic Church and you encouraging other people to leave the Catholic Church, then either that was God's intent or God fucked up because God didn't tell you to not leave the Catholic Church. God hasn't told you that your impression of that was wrong. So either God had that goal or he fucked up.
Again, I don't think that is the ultimate goal.
Do you think maybe it was just a step along the way, part of the plan?
So if God gives instructions to someone, gives a message to someone, and he says, "Hey, here's a message for you," and the person thinks, "Wow, I just got a message from God, and that's leading me to conclude that I should leave the Catholic Church," and then God gives that person more messages and does not say, "Oh, no, I didn't want you to leave the Catholic Church," then God was at least okay with you leaving the Catholic Church. And then if you are actually convincing other people based on your gift that they should potentially also consider moving to a more Bible-based church and leaving the Catholic Church, and God rewards you by giving you even more messages, then that's either what God wants, because first of all, nothing can happen that doesn't go according to God's plan. But either that's what God wanted or God fucked up. Those are the only two options.
Maybe it's just I don't understand exactly the end game with him.
Gina, is it possible if I'm God, I am God right now, and I'm more real than any God that's ever given you any message, and I give you a message, and you go off and do something that was not my intended result? Is the error on you or on me?
It'd be on me.
No.
What?
I'm God. If I can't communicate my meaning in clearly, then it's my fault. It's not your fault for failing to understand God. And if you go off, if I tell you, love your neighbor as yourself, and you decide that means to go off and kill somebody, and I not only don't correct you, don't stop you, but then after you kill somebody, I reward you with more messages, is that your fault or my fault? If God is reinforcing your confusion, that's God's fault. How often can you get these messages?
Maybe monthly.
Cool. What was the last one?
It was just last week.
What was it?
What was it?
Yeah.
Okay, I was walking my dog. I was coming back home, and my neighbor was having his roof worked on, and there was a guy. One of the roofers was wearing a red jacket. So as I came around the corner, God said, "Talk to that guy and tell him about me," meaning the guy in the red jacket. So later on, while he
Okay.
was when he got off the roof. Huh? Did you
No, I'm
wanna hear
sorry.
it?
I realized something that I didn't realize earlier. Please continue. I apologize for being rude. Please continue.
Oh, okay. When he finally got off the roof, I walked over to him and I awkwardly said, because I didn't know what to say. I said, God said to talk to you. I said, I admitted. I said, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say. We kind of talked about a little bit about Jesus. He starts crying a little bit. This is a man I don't know. He starts crying a little bit and had admitted, he says, he and his family are going through a really tough time right now because his daughter was murdered last year. And so he says he finds it funny that someone comes over and wants to talk about God with him. He says it brought him. He said it brought him comfort. So
Okay,
that
Gina,
was just on
Hey,
Wednesday.
can I ask a million questions really quick?
What? I just have one.
Okay, you go first then.
If I randomly walked up to 100 people and told them that God told me to talk to them, what percentage of them do you think would talk about how it's been a rough time and that it's really interesting that somebody thinks God wanted them to talk to them? What percentage do you think would react like that way?
I agree. It'd be really high. I agree.
Yeah, I'll let Forrest go now.
I had a similar question. So, just out of curiosity, what was the ethnicity of the man that you were talking to?
I do not. I don't know. Maybe white or
Okay.
Hispanic.
White or Hispanic, we'll say. Okay.
He had white skin with dark hair.
Okay, sure. Well, let's try both. So, Hispanic Americans, very high religiosity among that community. White Americans, especially evangelical Christians, very high religiosity. Hispanic Americans, more like Catholicism, right? So, you have the two groups that you've suggested, very high religiosity. You live in New Mexico, very religious part of the country, if I remember right. You're talking to someone who is a construction worker working on a roof. Again, disproportionately high rates of religion among, someone who's going to be in a labor position. Probably, maybe this guy is very educated and has a great job and works in this, who knows, but like not a highly educated position of labor. So unlikely to fall into that category where you tend to have more and more people being atheists there. So you have a part of the country that's very religious, with two ethnicities possible that are very religious, in a line of work that leads me to assume this person might also be very religious. And you said he's falling on hard times. The daughter being killed is a bit of a wild card there, but who in this country at this moment isn't having some hard times? Everything's going for shit for everybody. The economy sucks, the roads suck, the schools suck, the government sucks. And yeah, as we just talked about a minute ago, gun violence is extremely high, especially in places like New Mexico. There's a lot of gun violence there. So not overwhelmingly shocked that someone had a family member die. So you're talking to someone who is statistically very likely to be religious about a religion that you also share. Yeah, it's going to be touching to them. And when I groaned a minute ago, rudely, I admit, when I groaned rudely a minute ago because of what you said, it was because I didn't put it together, what you were saying, that I heard God tell me I need to talk to this person, so I did, and it mattered to them. I've heard that exact story. I'm not even a one word difference. That exact story about 10 bazillion freaking times, because I grew up in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, which there's double digit churches. I live in Tulsa now. I've lived in several places around the Tulsa and Broken Arrow area. If you're from here, these are all very close communities. This is all like, there's always been double digit churches within walking distance of my house. Every person that I went to school with has told me that story at one time or another. I just felt God tell me I needed to talk to this person who is the greeter at Walmart, and they told me that they'd been having a hard time at home, and I got them to go back to church, and they really loved it, and it really meant something to them, and that just reinforced my faith. And like, I've heard it a billion times because I live in a very religious community that is predominantly white and predominantly evangelical Christian because of it. And so everybody thinks the same thing and behaves the same way. So like this went from like an interesting study in confirmation bias, and I wonder why you might think that way, and maybe we can suss it out, to an extremely, extremely common story that I cannot believe it's taken me 27 minutes to realize I've heard a million times before. Just that's kind of where I'm at right now, Gina. It just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks that this is the same thing that I grew up with.
So Gina, let me do this because
sure.
We have nothing to go on. We have nothing to verify. We have nothing at all to consider, and nothing that I would find particularly impressive that we can verify, and you seem to be reaching conclusions that you can't justify. So let's do this. Are you able to ask God to give you messages about things?
I don't think I've done that. No.
Well, give it a try. So you should ask God to tell you exactly what you need to say to us, what it is that we need to hear, and then call us back when God gives you a word of knowledge about us.
Yeah.
About you? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah, so something that would convince us to because like what a great thing. God, if your God could convince you of what to say to us to convince us, we could change all sorts of minds together. Imagine how many people watching the show right now would be immensely swayed if Matt or I were to be like, oh shit, you know what? Jesus, yeah.
God evidently told you to talk to somebody working on a roof. Did he tell you to call our show? I doubt it. But if there is a God and he knows things that you and I don't know, then God could easily give you a message that you could then call in and give to us that we would have to accept.
Right, but would you honestly, let's pretend that happened. Would you honestly believe
Gina, don't
me?
say it. I tried to stop you, Gina. I just explained to you.
What did I say?
Shut up. I just explained to you that if there is a God, he should know exactly what to say to us that would convince us of what you're saying or what message he has, or that he knows my inner thoughts or anything at all like that. I gave you a way to test this, which, by the way, you haven't made any attempt to test this. You think you're getting messages from a fucking God, and you don't bother to keep a diary or find out how many of them are true. This is the same thing I hear over and over again. It is absolutely garbage epistemology where you just go with your gut. But if there is a God, he knows exactly what I need to hear. And I gave you a way to test it. And your first response was to doubt that I would actually be honest. Fuck you, Gina.
That's so fucking. That's such a cop out, dude. Like, do you understand that? That's such a cop out. God knows what to say that would convince us instantly, and you're like, yeah, but you lie. God knows what to say that we. God knows what to say that we wouldn't lie.
I did not.
God knows what to say that would be so compelling that we wouldn't be able to be dishonest about it.
Are you trying to pretend like we're the stupid ones who didn't hear what you actually said to us when you doubted that we would honestly reply?
No, I said maybe you wouldn't believe me.
That's
I didn't
bullshit.
Say you would
Rewind
lie,
it.
I would lie.
Rewind the tape. You were giggling and mocking whether or not we would reply honestly. Don't fucking lie to me, Gina.
We would have to
You're
believe it.
Lying to yourself. You are busy lying to yourself. You're not going to lie about me or to me on the show.
No, I'm not lying.
You are. I can rewind it.
No.
Yes, I can rewind
it.
I'm not going to bother, though. Gina, go off and think about it and talk to God and see if God will give you some sort of message for us. Until then, I don't need to hear from you. I don't need to have people question my honesty when I'm sitting here engaging with you, listening to you for 30 minutes, give us absolutely nothing, but you think you're getting messages from a God. And at every opportunity, when we talk about how we might go about testing this or what we could explore, not once did we accuse you of dishonesty. Not once did we doubt that you were getting anything at all. All we did was ask questions. And when we gave you a way to test the protective safety mechanisms in your brain that keep you deluded in religious think, caused you to doubt our honesty rather than to consider a test that could demonstrate the truth. You don't give a shit about the truth. You don't care if your conclusions are true. You just want to feel a certain way. You want to feel like God gave you a special message. You want to feel like God wanted you to go talk to people. If you start preaching at people on planes like these people in the viral videos, how are you different? It's the most obnoxious stuff. And when we came to you and said, here's a way we could potentially test it, you decided to question our honesty. That's fucked up, Gina. That's absolutely fucked up.
I've been watching the chat the whole time here, and like people
did not.
Here, I'm going to mute you. If you're just going to sit there and keep fucking lying to me, you did, in fact, question. You laughed and said, yeah, but would you really, honestly? It's fucking shameful that you're trying to fucking gaslight me on my own fucking show.
We've had people this whole 30 minutes.
Yes, you are.
In the chat.
Here, goodbye. I'm hanging up on you now. Go off and reconsider your life choices. You're not fucking gaslighting me on my own fucking show.
We've had people in the chat this entire time saying, oh, she's just lying. She's making it up. She's trying to get attention, whatever like that. And our mods have been deleting those messages and like timing people out and like banning people for being shitty to Gina because we don't know. You know what I mean? That's and then for her to come in and be like, yeah, but would you really believe it? Like that, which not only is that rude to us, but it also completely flies in the face of the proposition that you gave. God could say something so compelling that we would believe it. Yeah, but you wouldn't believe it though. What?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's one of those things where I spent decades doing this. Gina's not the first person I've asked them to. As a matter of fact, I flat out told people, go off and ask God what you should say to me and then call me back and don't call back till you get a message. Because if God knows exactly what you should say to me and tells you, and you call in and you say exactly what the all-knowing, all-powerful creator and governor of the universe told you to say to me, you don't get to question my honesty anymore. Because if I deny it, then God clearly told you the wrong thing to say to me, which means God didn't know what the fuck to say to me. I'm sorry that logic is so absolutely difficult for some of you, but it's not that difficult for the rest of us. If there is some message that God could give me or Forrest, or a message for both of us that would fundamentally impact us, maybe we wouldn't worship, but we'd have to believe, or we'd have to acknowledge that you made a good point, or you had something that was testable. If God had a message for us, it would be impossible for it to be the wrong message.
Yep.
If the model is set up where God knows the right thing for you to say to us, it is impossible for us to react in the wrong way. I don't know how else to explain this, but you're not going to, I'm sorry, Gina, that you have been duped into 6 years of vague premonitions on world and local events that you get in dreams and visions or sometimes auditory hallucinations, and you haven't bothered to keep a diary. 6 years. If I was getting messages from God that started coming through, or messages from anybody that started coming through, if I started getting premonitions that were coming through, I would have already won the James Randi Educational Foundation's $1 million prize if it still was going on, but it's not right now.
Right.
But
I'm just like, it blows my mind that like she never even answered the question of like, how do you know for sure it's even from God? Like, what if Satan's doing it? What if the Catholic Church is right? And Satan is out there trying to make you into the prophet to lead people into the church. How do you know?
What if you're a mutant? What if you're a time traveler?
What it is?
Oh my gosh, there's other things. What if you're just delusional? What if you're just cherry picking? What if there's any number of potential solutions here?
It's Jesus. It's Jesus, though.
And it's the particular God that I already believe in. But I'm not going to bother to keep track. I'm not going to bother to take notes. I'm not going to bother to say,
she never picked up a Bible as a kid. She never. She wasn't that type.
Yeah.
Of, it changed her whole life.
She didn't know
It
that guy on the
changed her
roof.
whole life. No,
It's amazing. Well, I
she'd
did
never
pick up a
seen a roof
Bible as a
before.
kid. I did pick up a Bible as a kid. I read it then. I read it when I was older. I read it as an adult. I've got one open right now on another screen. So between the two of us, I'm definitely the better Bible expert, although I don't consider myself a Bible expert. It's just bizarre that we can go through and have an honest conversation where we're trying to explain why we're not convinced of something. And then when we give the test, it's always when we get to the thing that would show that they're either right or wrong. That's
that it's
when
faith
that's
that
when
matters.
the protective mechanisms go up.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those. It's the word I always heard was thought stoppers. The concept of hell, the concept of faith, the concept is you know anything you're asking questions. Well, you just have to believe. There's no more thinking involved in that concept then, or in that conversation.
By the way, for the theist that's getting out there, getting ready to email saying the reason that they won't do that is because there's nothing that God could say or do that would ever convince you, and so God won't. Well, cool. Then leave me the fuck alone.
Although then God has something that He can't do. God's powerless.
Yeah.
God's
I am more
powerless to save our
powerful
souls.
than your God. My stubbornness or my skepticism is more powerful than your God. Whatever it is, however you want to frame it, so that you can keep smiling when you go to church and lying to yourself. Anyway, we got more callers.
Yeah.
From Louisiana. Pronouns he, him. Is it Izondo or Izondo? I don't know how to pronounce it. My apologies. How do I say that? Izondo. Thanks. Welcome to the show. You're on with Forrest and Matt.
Yes. Thank you for taking my call. I have a few points, I think, that we'll have a good discussion.
I just saw what's written on the call screen, and I don't believe you already that you have a few good points. But go on, let's talk.
Yeah, absolutely. We probably won't agree. We'll probably have to agree to disagree,
Probably
but I'll
not.
make the points regardless. We'll see.
Well, the
So
question
firstly,
here, Azondo, hang on just a second.
Yeah.
It's not so much about whether we agree. It's you have views on slavery, morality, and a woman's place in the world. I'm interested in what those views are. I'm interested in why you hold those views, and I'm interested in why you think we should hold those views. So pick one of those views, tell us what it is, why you believe it, and why you think we should believe it.
Okay. So firstly, it's not necessarily that I feel like you should hold these views, but I'm defending the point that Christianity biblically holds these views. So I'm not saying that you should hold the views.
Stop.
Sorry.
I don't give a fuck. Izondo, I don't give a fuck what your opinion is about what Christians should believe. That has zero relevance to me or Forrest or anybody watching this show. The only thing is I'm interested in what you believe and why. But if you don't think we should share that belief, then we can move on. Because it doesn't mean it means you don't believe your belief is true.
We'll skip it and go to the point. I know that's what you're after. So slavery, right? Firstly, I would ask, do you have a problem with prisons?
Yes.
I have a number of problems with prisons, but prisons and slavery aren't remotely the same thing. So my position on my position on prisons is completely separate from my positions on slavery, because in prisons, you don't have one person owning another as property that they can pass on to their children and beat.
Well, I agree that chattel slavery is bad and is immoral. But as far as slavery in general, if we were to look at the 13th Amendment,
there is no slavery in general, Azondo. There is either you are free or you are owned by someone. Are you okay with one person? Listen to me. Are you okay with one person owning another person as property?
It depends on why, but it could be a yes, because the difference is
we already
in the
have
Bible,
a significant disconnect, and that's where we should be focusing on.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about it. My opinion is this: as far as because a lot of people consider prisons to be modern day slavery because of the
Azondo,
13th
all right,
Amendment.
That's not what that means.
I'm going to mute you, and you're going to stop talking, and you're going to listen very closely. I want to be very clear. Prison isn't slavery. I'm only talking about a circumstance of slavery where one person owns another person as property. That's what the Bible allows and advocates for. That one person can own another person as property, that they can pass on to their children, that they can beat within it. Now, if you're not advocating, I don't know, you've never mentioned the Bible, you never mentioned Christianity. So if that's not what you're advocating for, that's fine. But if you're just going to keep going down this path of comparing prisons to slavery, I will end the call because those aren't honest. So are you defending a biblical view?
Let's talk about it. I'm sorry.
No.
I want to be clear.
I'm going to mute you again. And when I unmute you, show me that you heard that I fucking said something and thought about it for a second, and not that you were just waiting to come off mute for your turn to speak. I asked a question at the end of that, and you immediately went to, well, let's talk about it. I'm not interested in talking about it. I'm interested in having you answer the question. Is it your position?
I meant talking about what you meant.
Oh my God, you are so fucking obnoxious. We are never going to get to a point, are we, Azondo?
No, I meant when I said let's talk about it, I meant let's talk about your point.
My fucking question was this. Are you defending a biblical view?
Yes. In the Bible,
why
they didn't.
No, that was a yes or no question. I'm going to mute you again. And when I unmute you, the next question is, why couldn't you have said yes the first time I asked that instead of doing all this other stuff? Why couldn't you say yes the first time?
So my answer is yes. My point is biblical.
Okay. My question just now was, why couldn't you say yes the first time? And what you said when I took you off mute was not an answer to that question. You need to learn how to actually listen to what someone's saying so that you can answer the correct question. My question, once again, why couldn't you say yes the first time I asked you whether or not you were trying to defend a biblical worldview?
I was just taking it, I was doing it the long way, I guess, because I was literally going to respond to what you said, and I'm still prepared to respond to what you said.
Okay, then let's talk about the biblical thing, because if you're talking about prison today as an analog for slavery, something like modern day slavery, that's a saying, and it's one that I have a lot to say about, but that's not what we're here for. That's not what the root of the problem is. The root of the problem is that you a minute ago said that chattel slavery, owning a person as property, is sometimes acceptable. We can have a discussion and debate about whether or not prison labor or whatever, that with the 13th Amendment having an exception for punishment and all these things. Those are conversations we could have. None of them are relevant to a biblical position, to an atheist position, any of that. So let's just stick to chattel slavery. Why in the actual fuck would you ever suggest that it's okay to own another person as property? Just start with just that. I swear to glob, if you talk about prisons, I'm going to lose it. Just talk about chattel slavery.
The thing that has to be pointed out is biblical slavery and chattel slavery have one thing in common, and it solely rests on property for life. But in the Bible, they talked about slavery being prisoners of war, debtors. That is the thing.
Except for all the times that they didn't, right? Because when they talked about debtors, and when they talked about, being an indentured servant, when they talked about Hebrew slaves, when they talked about all these other things, those were separate instances from the several times where the Bible also says, take slaves from the heathen among you. They are your property to be passed on to your children. You can beat them so long as they don't die within a couple of days. Those are all the rules for taking actual human beings and making them into farming equipment. Those are the rules that were used here in the United States to justify chattel slavery that we had here. Those are the rules that were used in the slaves' Bible when we taught African slaves about Christianity using this specially foreign version of the Bible that had all the references to freedom and liberation and redemption cut out. Those are the things that Christians used to justify slavery then, and for a long time after then. That's what we're talking about. Yes, there is different times of slavery in the Bible. We're talking about this one.
Yes, and I'm gonna do you a big favor.
Well,
Stop pretending that you know something about chattel slavery when you've mispronounced it every time. It's chattel, not chattel.
I'm from Louisiana. I have a Louisiana
I don't give a
accent.
shit where you're from.
Are we
That's
gonna-
how you
are we
fucking
gonna
pronounce
split
the
hairs?
word. Okay, never mind. You're not interested in learning anything. Proceed. No, keep making a jackass out of yourself. Go for it. Go for it.
Because I'm not sure the other gentleman's name. Valkai, I think.
I'm Forrest.
Forrest. The thing is, you can't. Slavery in the United States was based on race. Was based on when most people say chattel
Izondo?
or however you pronounce it.
That's not
They're
relevant.
talking about race.
We're talking
based.
all right, I'm going to mute you again.
God damn,
See,
dude.
Now
Just
you've
one sentence.
decided that you want to address slavery in the United States was based on race. So what? That's not relevant. The issue here is about, is it morally permissible for one person to own another person, no matter what their fucking race is or when the time period is or anything else? Forrest and I say that should not happen, and you say it should happen depending on the circumstances. What are the circumstances in which case you are okay with me owning you?
Forrest brought in U.S. slavery, so I piggybacked off of it. Firstly,
Right.
Second of all,
I was using it as an example of what you're talking about, bro. Like, just answer the question.
I responded to that example.
What are the circumstances under which you're okay with me owning you?
If I was a debtor, or
No, sir.
if I
no, sir. No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. No, sir.
How
No,
much
sir.
money do you need to owe somebody before their kids inherit you? What is that?
I'm not saying. I
This
said
is
I'm
the-
against chattel slavery.
No,
But you
first
did
of all,
this a minute ago.
fucking chattel slavery. But second of all, you said that it's okay under certain circumstances for one person to own another person's property. I then asked you what the circumstances would be, and you went to if you owed a debt. No, sir. If you owe someone a debt, you do not become their property to pass on to their children. Indentured servitude, by the way, is also immoral. And so were debtors' prisons, but that is still not slavery where one person is owned as property. The Bible specifically tells you who to enslave, how to enslave them, to buy them from the heathen that surround you, how you must treat your Jewish slaves separate from your non-Jewish slaves, all of this. If you're going to defend a biblical slavery position, stop talking about prison, stop talking about slavery in the U.S., stop pretending that you're opposed to chattel slavery when you just said that there are circumstances under which it's permissible for one person to own another's property.
Not for life. I said own a person for a period of time.
That's not what
for life.
own someone for property means. You don't get to redefine shit in order to avoid the consequences. The Bible specifically advocates for owning them as property and passing them on to your kids.
I mean, I'm not going to argue with that. My point is that
do you support
as far as the Bible is
do you support it or not?
Are you okay with me owning you as property under the conditions the Bible has laid out? Are you okay with that?
I would be biased in that answer. You got to ask me if I'm okay with me owning someone or if I'm okay with you owning someone else. Obviously,
how is it a different answer?
No,
how
I don't.
Is it a different answer?
Jackass. Is it okay in your model? Is it okay for you to be my slave under what it says in Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy?
It's okay for you to be my slave.
No, I'm not. How can it possibly be? Shut up. How can it possibly be okay for me to be your slave and not okay for you to be my slave?
Because I'm biased. I just said that.
Goodbye.
It's because what an amazingly honest position. I don't want to be a slave, but I mean, for everybody else, fuck it, right? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
Jesus of
okay.
Christ land, dude.
Why don't you shove your shetel up your ass, you absolutely dishonest individual. That's not the way morality works.
I'm very honest.
No, shut up.
You could be my slave.
No,
very,
you're just gonna shut
very
up
honest and very evil. Jesus Christ.
You don't get to call in and lecture us on chattel slavery and morality when it's moronic, when you're going to say it's okay for me to be your slave under Exodus, but it's not okay for you to be my slave under Exodus. You haven't got a fucking clue what you're talking about on morality, and you are willing to bend over backwards to make excuses for a book that has been used to enslave the hearts and minds and bodies of countless people. The Bible is very clear in Exodus 21. It has different rules for if you have Jewish slaves than if you have Gentile slaves. And yes, there's the year of Jubilee. Every 50 years, you have to let everybody go. But if you buy them in the first year after the year of Jubilee, that means you get a slave for 50 years. And when the average lifespan is 40 to 50 years, that's fucking life. It is absolutely embarrassing for you to try to defend this. So let's set slavery aside. And just for clarity, you mentioned also, I'm going to skip past morality because you don't understand it, that you wanted to discuss a woman's place in the world. So when I take you off mute, don't talk about any of the other stuff. Tell me, what do you think is a woman's place in the world and why? Go.
All right. So I feel like, as far as the Bible is concerned, it holds the more natural point of view, because in nature, as things work, the person, the individuals, the group who has the power makes the rule. Men have more power than women. That's not to say that they should be mistreated, but as far as nature is concerned, there is a hierarchy in place, a very functional hierarchy, where the head of household is functional to society. They are tasked with running, maintaining.
In nature. I'm just laughing at you talking about in nature, and then also talking about how women shouldn't be mistreated. They should just be subservient, but not mistreated.
So I agree with you. I agree with you, Isando, that the Bible is misogynistic and favors men, and holds women in disdain and barely mentions any of them by name, doesn't give them the power to own property in the same way, all this. But you're arguing that the Bible says this because that's natural. Well, that's called a naturalistic fallacy. And also
not fucking true.
It's also not true that in nature, men are in charge. So if we decided, for example, to just put women in charge, to give women all the power, to, because like women couldn't vote up until recently. What if we just made it so that men can't vote? Now women have the power. What would be wrong with that?
Women could never have that position because men are stronger. We could take the power back. They don't have the power.
You're not stronger, and that's not how things work.
This guy's not serious. Can we all agree this is a troll?
Might makes right fucking view. No, that's not.
How do you think it is? I just looked up. I just Googled just for funsies because it's fun to learn new things. You should try it. Just some matriarchal cultures, and here I've got a bunch of them. One in India, one in China, one in Indonesia, one in Ghana, one in Costa Rica. These are matriarchal cultures where the women are in charge. Why don't the strong men just rise up and do what's natural, Asando?
Because they let it happen. They're fine with it. But if they weren't fine with it, they have the power to remove.
They're betas, right?
They're betas. That's what they're
betas, aren't they, Isando?
What?
They're betas. They just won't rise up and take their power.
They're soy boys.
I mean, I'm not gonna. I don't play into the alpha, beta, all that. Whatnot.
Oh yes, you absolutely do.
You just use the talking points. You don't buy into it. You just use the language.
Yeah, you are expressing those ideas, even if you're not using that language.
Okay. Do you think men and women are equal?
Yes. Yes, and that's not a controversial view.
Under the law, and with respect to how we value them, I think all people should be equal: men, women, and neither.
Okay, so why in sports are they based on gender? Why don't
I have to,
you know?
I have to
Hey,
know, Isondo.
If women
Isondo,
and men are
Hey,
equal,
go ahead.
I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt to say that you're just a troll. It's possible that you actually believe this garbage, but the language that you're using at this point is funny to me, and I'm pretty sure that you're just fucking with us and yanking our chain. But on the off chance that you're not, do you know at all, like, who I am or what I do for? That sounds so shitty. Do you know who I am? I mean that sincerely. I don't mean like, how dare you speak to me? I mean like, do you know what my background is and why I'm on this show?
no.
Okay, just so you're clear, just so we're all here. I'm a biologist. I study and teach biology for a living. I have a channel, a YouTube channel. I talk about biology and everything. My particular area of research and expertise where I focus on is biological anthropology and evolutionary biology. Biological anthropology is the study of the evolution and biology of human beings. So like that's kind of my jam. Just so you're aware. There's no evidence to suggest that there's this natural world where men are just dominant. There's lots of cultures all around the world with gender diversity, with matriarchal cultures, where men aren't just naturally in charge. You're asking, why do we divide sports, and why do men had the right to vote for a long time because we're strong and blah blah blah. I'm dying to know if you think that this is actually just the way that nature is, and all these other cultures in history and across the world that defy that are just like aberrant blue-haired liberals or something, or if maybe, just maybe, we can rely on the historical evidence of the fact that white supremacist, Christian, heteronormative, cisgendered, the European standard of colonization and genocide steamrolled across the whole planet. And now, especially in the global north, we have the culture that we have. And you're looking at the culture as it is today and being like, this must be natural. Do you think that's fucking weird? Like, do you think that maybe you're misinterpreting what's going on around you at all? Is that something that registers in your brain?
You know,
I don't. First of all, none of that has to do with whether men are stronger than women, which they are. I think we can all agree on that. That's the reason why we don't say sports against women.
So first of all, we were talking about equality, and in response to me saying that men, women, and non-binary people should be considered equal, which is an idealistic sense of value with regard to rights and freedoms, you said, "Oh, but you don't think men are stronger than women?" Equality has nothing to do with whether or not a group or an individual is physically stronger or faster or smarter. So what sport are you the best at, Isondo?
Basketball.
Is there a woman that could kick your ass at basketball?
Probably. She'd be one in a million, but she's there.
1 in a million. So of all the women who are like in the WNBA, you could take most of them.
I'm not an elite basketball player.
I didn't ask you about it. I didn't ask you if you were in the league or not.
You're comparing me to.
You can't
compare elite with elite.
You are incapable of listening and answering the question. So let me try this again. You said you're the best at basketball. I said, is there a woman who could beat you? And you said she'd be 1 in a million. And then I asked about WNBA. So are there lots of women who could beat you at basketball?
Just because I'm not even that good at
lots of women?
Yes or no? Yes or no?
Are there lots of women?
Let me answer the question you asked.
Shut your mouth until I've asked the question, and then you can answer the question. Are there lots of
women? I didn't answer
women?
the first one, but okay.
Are there lots of women who could beat you at basketball? Yes or no?
No.
They're not.
There's not. There's not lots of women in the
that could beat you
WNBA
at basketball?
What?
Are there 5 women on the planet who could beat you at basketball?
That's not a lot. So yeah.
Are there 100 women on the planet who could beat you at basketball?
Barely. That's about the max.
Bullshit.
Compare the WNBA to the NBA.
Out of 4 billion people, Out of 4 billion people, not 100 of them can beat Izondo at basketball.
Izondo, I don't need to compare the WNBA to the NBA. Are you in the NBA?
That would be fair. You're not.
Are you
you're
in
not
the
making
NBA?
a fair comparison.
Hey, bitch, are you in the NBA?
Your mama's a bitch.
Your mama's a bitch. Are you in the NBA?
Your mama's a bigger bitch. She's a fat bitch.
Your
like
mama's
you're
the
a fat
biggest
bitch. What's
bitch.
up?
You want to keep doing it? Your mama's the biggest bitch ever. Your mama is so big of a bitch that she raised somebody who's too stupid to answer
Everybody
a
you know
question
is a
honestly.
bitch.
You want
Everybody
to keep
you
going?
know is a bitch.
You
What's
want
up?
to do that? Everybody I
Everybody
know
that
is a
look like
bitch.
you
I
is a
know
bitch.
you.
You're a
So,
fat
bitch,
bitch.
you
You're
going to
wearing
answer
the
my
Navy, but now
question?
you're not. Now you're a
Are
sorry,
you going to
sad,
answer my
sack of
question?
shit bitch.
You little
Pussy
coward.
bitch. Your girlfriend got a dick.
Izondo,
Your girlfriend got a
Izondo,
dick.
There we
Your
go.
girlfriend
We
got a dick.
it.
Your girlfriend
We
fucks you in the
got
ass.
There
Your
it
girlfriend.
You got it.
It's bigger than yours, and I'm still
Yay!
getting rid of it.
And now you get deleted, you little ignorant bigot. Your mama raised a
Oh my
bitch that is so
God.
punk ass. I knew it. I fucking knew
That's it just was a matter of time before it came out. Like, just it's fucking trying so hard, this thin veil behind the fucking Andrew Tate bullshit. Oh man.
There's one thing I really would love to say, but I won't, because it's anyway.
I love the fact that so quickly devolved into just yo mama and you fine fuck you and everybody who knows a bitch. He went from fucking trying so hard to have an adult conversation just straight down to 5th grade.
Yeah. I got news for you. I don't need to compare the NBA to the WNBA because you're not in the NBA. And I bet you didn't play college ball either. And I bet you the one thing that you might be the champion at is being the most prominent example of the Dunning-Kruger effect. You have no clue how little you know because you don't know. But hoorah.
Out of 4 billion people on the planet, not 100 of them could beat Izondo at fucking basketball. Yeah.
He can't even do that because he said she'd have to be 1 in a million. And then not even 104 billion. But it's so wild because
I hope
he wanted to call in to talk about women's place in the world and morality and slavery. And he's wrong at every possible turn and then has to just go to straight up bigotry.
You know what, though? You know what? I think we got through to him. I think we made a difference today in the world.
I think there's a real concern when somebody is that obsessed with men putting women in their place and making an appeal to nature. First of all, as I mentioned, there's this thing called the naturalistic fallacy, where someone basically asserts that because something is natural, that means it's good or right. Not only is that a fallacy in and of itself, lots of things are natural, doesn't mean they're good or good for you. But also, there's this issue of some things that you think are true in nature aren't. Like for years, people would say, oh, there's no homosexuality outside of, humans. And there's just, truckloads of gay activities, homosexual behaviors, and gender changing and gender swapping and all kinds of stuff in the natural world. It's just that people are incredibly ignorant about the natural world.
I was going to ask him, like, I know, I think that guy was like, I don't know. I'm on the fence as to whether or not he was actually just a troll, but at a certain point, I feel like the veneer that he had there was slipping, and I think he was just trying to get a rise out of people a lot. But I did want to ask him before he went if he understood the difference between sex and gender, and just like kind of play with him with that, just just see those fucking gears grind in his brain. It's a lot of fun.
And the thing is, all we really wanted, and it started off so bad, was when you call in and say, I want to talk about slavery, morality, and women's place. All right, we need to narrow this down to one topic. So pick one. He went with slavery. He's opposed to chattel slavery.
Chattel. Sounds like a
chattel.
luxury handbag.
It sounds like after Dave Chappelle got canceled on Netflix for being transphobic, he tried to change his name. But he didn't legitimately get canceled because nobody gets canceled. It's not cancel culture, it's accountability. But see, there's somebody who knows what's up. If the destruction of Izondo, is not worth a super chat, nothing is. Awesome. Thanks, Tony. It's once you hear the foundations of sexism, of misogyny and bigotry in somebody's message. It was very much it's okay for you to be my slave, but it's not okay for me to be your slave, which demonstrates that he doesn't understand slavery or morality, doesn't know what the Bible has to say about this, is willing to defend a weird version of it. And that's why I was like, well, let's move on to what the women's place is. And it's interesting because his main take, and we're going to get to other calls here in just a minute, his main take was going to be something that I understand. Views that I would have shared once upon a time. Like this notion of it's just natural that the man is the head of the household. That's why the Bible says it. It was God's plan. God has the man as the head of the house, as Christ is the head of the church, and women need to be subservient. These are all ideas that I would have shared. Hit the like button if you could beat Elizondo at basketball. Boom.
Did you see the chat poll?
Yeah, that's what I was just looking at.
It's so good. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that thing. I was going to say this is a very scientific study right now, and so far we've already found 235 people who absolutely could beat Elizondo at basketball, and I'm pretty sure that at least 200 of them are women. That's science. That's facts.
Yeah,
and I put just as much thought into that as Elizondo put into any of his positions, so it's right.
And I'm glad you're here. I'm just sorry we couldn't get to it, and I wouldn't want to put you on the spot to come up with a bunch of examples. But there are not only species like whiptail lizards and others that are entirely female. They don't have any males. They reproduce asexually through parthenogenesis. Actually, it wouldn't be asexual; it'd just be parthenogenic.
They still have sex. It's strictly speaking asexual because there isn't a second gamete involved, but like they still have sex.
Yeah, they're all lesbians. But then there's other animals where the various roles are swapped around from what we would consider normal, like the male seahorse is the one that carries the babies and things like that. But this power dynamic that he wanted to talk about, it doesn't even have to exist. Oh, you can't have equality because men can just beat you up and take back the power that they gave you.
Mm-hmm.
True. But if they're only sitting around engaged in their bigotry and they're delusional enough to think that there's only a couple hundred women that could, or maybe 100 women that could beat them at basketball, I don't like their chances.
I love the assertion that patriarchy is natural because men are always going to be in charge or so much stronger and all this stuff. And then when we offered like, hey, here's several cultures that are matriarchal. Yeah, but those men are fine. The men allow it. they wanted the unnatural scenario of having a woman in charge.
All right, we have other theistic callers, and I don't want to keep them waiting. Especially
how long are we going today? By the way, I don't know if the show has a limit.
We tend to shoot for 5, so another 90 minutes.
I'm fine with that. Yeah, I was just curious. I didn't know if we were gonna have a 30-minute, 45-minute.
We could do a 9-hour show, but I'm pretty sure my wife would kill me. But all right, Andrew in Florida, thank you so much for waiting. My apologies for all the crap you had to listen to just a minute ago. Andrew's a theist, pronouns are he, him, that wants to talk about how religion's not evil, it's the way people use it. So welcome, Andrew.
Hello, gentlemen. I just can't believe I heard your mama jokes. So I just want to say your mama.
Right.
Sorry,
yeah. Right. Normally, I wouldn't condone such a thing, but in that situation, like it couldn't have gotten any stupider. It was just fun.
I was already in full stupid mode at that point. So.
It was it was exactly as much respect as the conversation deserved. I'll be honest with you.
So I would say probably Andrew is the first thing is that I realize that when the call screener takes notes on these things, they're going to kind of summarize things really succinctly. And so it just says here, religion is not evil. It's the way people use it. Are you talking about religion in general or a specific religion? Well, you just tell us what it is that you mean and we'll consider it and talk about it.
Okay. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the rhetoric from both Matt and Forrest, just religion in general, all religion as the existence of religion, period, is just bad for humanity. And it is anti-humanist. And I feel like that falls into a fallacy called the fallacy of hasty generalization, where you just give the worst parts of something and saying, therefore, that something is bad. And I just want to say that religion is like technology. You can use it for bad. You can use it for good. It's not associated with bad or good. People are bad or good. People's decisions are bad or good. People's religion is bad or good. You just get a better religion, but religion itself is neutral.
So, just two things really quickly. Number one, clarification. I don't say that religion blanket period is always anti-humanist. It would take you 2 seconds to talk to a religious person for them to brag about all the charity that they do. My position is that religion causes undue harm by its very existence, harm to individuals, and then because it causes harm to individuals, harm to societies. And that, as I think we talked about this the last time you and I spoke, there is not a single thing that a good thing that a religious person could do in the name of their religion that an atheist couldn't also do in the name of their humanitarianism, their humanism, whatever it may be. However, there are innumerable and very easy to conceptualize a lot of bad things that a religious person would do in the name of their religion, demonstrably so, that an atheist would not do in the name of atheism, or because of their atheism, I would say as well. And that's why, second point, last time you and I spoke, you said that, if I remember right, that theism is more credible because theists are more likely to have children, and that theism brings about structures of society that make society better. But you failed to then take that to its conclusion and say, therefore, theocracy would be good. You just decided that theocracy would be bad. So my question to you, after I've clarified my position, there's no reason for you to have to speak to that. But like, my question to you is, if everybody followed the religion that you think is correct in the way that you think is correct, would then theocracy be good? Do you think that's a good idea?
If they follow it in a healthy way, in a good way. And if the theocracy was democratic in nature, yes.
Then you just proved my point,
religion.
which is why. Then I'm sorry. I promise I'll shut up after this, Matt. I'm so sorry. Then you just demonstrated why I don't believe what you're saying. If you can say my religion is so good, and if it's practiced in such a good way that it's okay for us to have theocracy, no matter what the caveats are, to have religious leaders in charge running things and a state religion that you're mandated to be taught and all the things, then we already disagree on whether or not religion can be a good thing in this way. That is an evil proposition. And for you to say it's not actually evil because they're doing it my way demonstrates the evil of that proposition. That's my thought. I'll shut up for a minute, Matt, please.
No. I want to wait to see what Andrew has to say, because I've lots of questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, the caveat wasn't if they practice it in my way. I said if they practice it in a good way, and if it's democratic in nature, meaning
So,
it has
Andrew.
to be the will of the people.
And
So
Andrew,
religion doesn't. Yeah.
so saying it would be good if they practice it in a good way is a tautology. That's like saying, if you just turn right, we'll keep going right. But when also, I can't remember, aren't you a Christian of some sort?
Yes.
Is Christianity democratic? Whoops. Whoops.
Democratic. A religion democratic.
You just said that it would be a good thing if they practice it democratically. And I just asked you, is Christianity democratic? It's not. By the way, are you an advocate of the Bible?
Parts of it, not the bad parts, the good parts.
Okay. How do you tell which parts are bad and which parts are good?
Well, that's easy. There's bad parts in the Bible, the parts that cause harm. You say, no, this is ungodly, this is evil, this is twisted religion. The good parts, the humanist parts, you follow it and you say, yes, this is good, this is godly.
So
whatever
you
you think God is.
So you look at the Bible and you decide on your own which things from God you can just throw out as not good. So when the Bible advocates for slavery, you toss that out.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's in the
Andrew
Bible,
knows better
right?
than-
Isn't the Bible inspired by God?
Yeah,
Has
the
God
good parts.
ever?
The good parts
has-
are inspired.
Okay,
Ah,
in the
of
good part,
course.
in the good parts of the Bible, where does God say slavery is immoral?
It doesn't say that.
It doesn't say that. So you have a good God, you think, who inspired parts of a Bible and didn't inspire other parts. And so you think the part about slavery isn't inspired by God, but you also think that God, in the entire history of inspiring the Bible, didn't ever bother to say slavery is immoral. So God is okay with a book where
Supposedly from him.
it's all supposedly from him, but each person has to decide, no, that part's not from God, even though God didn't at any point say slavery is immoral.
Yeah, we have
God-
to decide. There's no
Is God
divine being here on earth
why
like that
can't
we can
God?
talk to. That can,
I have a
what's
similar
something-
question when you're done.
What's something good in the Bible that God clearly inspired?
love your neighbor as yourself.
How do you know that
love
God
your enemies.
inspired that? How do you know that God inspired that?
Because it's good.
Can
Okay.
you think of one
It's a good
culture
thing.
from anywhere around the world that doesn't have a similar law?
No, I'm sure it is. God can inspire many other things outside the Bible.
I have another
The good
question
things that
also,
we have.
going back to the democracy thing, when Matt asked you if Christianity is democratic, is Saudi Arabia democratic? Is that a democracy?
It is not democratic.
Okay, I was just curious because the last time you and I talked, I remember that you said that it would be best if societies were run by religion, and I asked you what's an example of a society that's run by religion that's going well, and you said Saudi Arabia is pretty good. So I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page that the thing that you associated then also is not a democracy, nor is your religion. Just getting that out of the way. Sorry, little aside, just for fun.
Okay, because I need to understand this. I need to understand this, Andrew.
Okay, sorry, Matt.
I need to understand this. So out of the whole Bible, the message, love your neighbor as yourself, you say is clearly inspired by God because it's good. How do you know it's good?
Because we see how it functions in society, and it promotes it promotes the most amount of happiness and human flourishing.
So your standard for determining if something is good is to see its impact on society and evaluate whether it makes society better or not.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you know that God is good and would only inspire good things?
I'm not sure.
Okay. And yet you think it's very clear that God inspired the message, love your neighbor, and that God did not inspire the message, you can enslave the people, buy your slaves from the heathen that surround you. So you've reached a conclusion about which parts of the Bible are inspired by God based on zero evidence or understanding of what God would or wouldn't say, and 100% evidence on a humanistic perception of the consequences of actions. You can see that slavery makes the world worse and loving people makes the world better, right?
Yeah.
So why aren't you merely a
But
secular humanist? Why aren't you merely a secular humanist, and instead you want to claim that God inspired something that you can't know he inspired?
Wow. Good question. I didn't call in to prove that, but I'll answer. I'll answer. Because religion, our human culture, is a fundamental aspect of what it is to be a human being, and so I believe those things. I'm not saying I have evidence for them.
Can you back that up with anything? That it's a fundamental part of being a human being to be religious? What's your evidence for that?
Yeah,
Because that sounds an awful lot like you're saying that Matt and I aren't human there.
Well, you replace religion. Well, you replace it with things. But
what did I replace religion with?
Ritual.
It's so strange because this is not an answer to my question. My question is, if you are going to appeal to secular humanism to determine what is good, and you have no way of knowing whether or not God exists or is good or inspired good, why aren't you merely a secular humanist? Why are you adding a Christian? Why are you a Christian?
I thought I answered that question.
No, you didn't.
Religion is a fundamental component of what it means to be human.
Sir. No, sir.
It's part of us.
Listen. Why are you a Christian and not a secular humanist? Both of which are religions.
I am both. They're both compatible.
No, they're fucking not.
The name secular in secular humanism kind of makes them incompatible, bruh.
Christianity, do you believe that there is a God?
What was the question?
Are you fucking kidding me? Do you believe that there's a God?
Yes.
That's two questions.
Do you believe that Jesus is divine?
Yes.
Do you believe that Jesus came to earth and died for our sins and was resurrected and ascended to heaven on the third day?
Yes.
That's not fucking compatible with secular humanism.
Jesus was the ultimate secular humanist.
You're so full of shit, Andrew.
What does secular mean, Andrew? What does secular mean? What's the definition of the word secular?
Oh, I'm sorry. Jesus was the ultimate humanist. I'm so sorry. Not the take out the word secular. Jesus was the ultimate humanist. I'm sorry. Secular means separating religion from
or the ultimate
society.
anything.
Where government
Jesus was not the ultimate humanist at all. At all. Absolutely not. Are you kidding? See, what sucks here, Andrew, is that this is the second time you and I have spoke. And the last conversation you and I had went about this same way, although, you know, a little bit more calm, I suppose. Right now, we're on a roll of just having fun with these calls today. But like, what's frustrating is that you keep, in both of these calls, you'll just assert something. And then we'll give a very reasonable follow-up question. And then you'll have like this long pause, like, oh, I didn't think about that. But it's okay because here's some other wild assertion. And like, I wonder if you're in the practice of just like poking at your own thoughts. And like, whenever you think a thing, you just like check and ask some questions about it and make sure that it's reasonable, or if you just latch onto it. Because like the assertion that religion is a natural part of being human because it's a ritual. I just pulled out an anthropology textbook to look up the definition of the word ritual. Not shit in here about religion. It just explains what it is and where they come from and why they're important for society. Rituals have lots of important things for culture, not necessarily a religious construct. So that's the thing. Here's a thought. I'm going to double check. And it turns out that doesn't make sense, so I'd let that thought go. Do you do that? Or do you just run with the thought because you had a thought?
I had an argument and I called in with it, and we went to something else.
Right, but did you think about the argument before you called us? Did you try to poke holes in your own argument and check to make sure that it made any sense before you called us?
Yes.
Okay, how'd you go about doing that? Where did you come to the conclusion that religion is a fundamental part of being a person, of being a human being?
Just studying religion and world religions class.
Okay, so you looked up religions in the world
and histories and countries.
You checked world religions and some history, and you saw that there's a common thread of religion, and so you assume that it's a fundamental part of all humans. Did you check to see like where religions come from, like how religion started? Did you find any positive evidence that religion is actually a natural thing that people must have? Did you check maybe where people develop their religions from? Did you look into like, you know, like where belief? I'm asking you if you just ask questions about the thing you think. You don't have to be a scholar. If you say everybody in the world believes stuff, therefore everybody must have to believe stuff. like, you didn't follow that up with the necessary questions to see if what you're saying is true. Instead, you called us, and now we have to sit here and have this argument about, like, the theocracy is good because it can be democratic. Does that make any sense? No, I guess not. The last time we talked, you said having a religious society is good. The more religious the society, it's better for people. And I asked you, is it better for gay people or for LGBT people in general or for women? Oh, I guess not. And this time here, well, everybody has to be religious. Matt and I aren't. So what? Like, it seems like you're just saying whatever jumps into your head.
Hey, Andrew, are you okay with divorce?
No, but do you want me to clarify or just yes or no?
Yes or no for just a minute here. Do you think secular humanism is okay with divorce?
It depends.
Come on.
No, actually,
yes, for the most part.
It doesn't.
Yes.
Actually, it doesn't depend. Secular humanism, along with other declarations of basic human rights, is fine with divorce for any number of reasons. And so when you say Jesus was the ultimate secular humanist, if secular humanists are okay with divorce, was Jesus okay with divorce?
No.
Well, he was in the case of fornication, right?
Yes, he gave one exception, one clause.
So,
yeah.
According to Jesus, there's only one circumstance under which divorce is permissible. And from a secular humanist standpoint, there are at least many. So how is Jesus the ultimate secular humanist if he's wrong on divorce?
I corrected it. I took out the word secular, and I just want to say humanist.
Okay.
Changes very little about his argument.
Define the difference between secular humanist and humanist. What's the humanist position on divorce? And how did you reach that?
Okay, the humanist position is divorce you can divorce if it promotes the well-being of a person. And you're saying there are multiple reasons for divorce. I would say there's times where humanism says you shouldn't divorce. And if a husband wants to cheat on his wife and divorce her because he doesn't like her anymore and abandon the children, humanism is against divorce in that case. So I would say, yes, humanism is against divorce in some cases.
Andrew, where are you getting this position of what humanism is for or against? Where's that coming from?
Specific sources?
Yes.
I don't have specific sources on hand.
So you're just pulling it out of your air. So you are just pulling it out of your ass. You are just making an unwarranted assertion. Here's what humanism says, and you have nothing to point to. And then you're saying Jesus is the ultimate humanist.
I also want to point out the fact that I also am a humanist, and whether secular or not, I also adhere to a lot of humanistic principles. I would consider myself a humanist. I would be fine with divorce in that case. If a guy just wanted to run off and abandon his family and leave his wife and kids and get divorced, I'd be super fine with that. I think the divorce should be allowed.
Forcing him to stay in that place would be worse for everybody involved.
Exactly. He's a shitty person. He should be allowed to go. And also he has human autonomy and doesn't need to be locked into a marriage contract. There's a lot of reasons why I would be supportive of that.
What he did was evil. And you guys would say
doesn't matter.
He can do whatever he wants.
He still has rights as a human being, and he doesn't have to be trapped in a marriage. And also, it's objectively better for the family as a whole to not be trapped with somebody like that who isn't going to take good care of them and is probably going to end up being spiteful and abusive to his children. So, I'm still good with divorce for multiple reasons. I'm good with it. I don't care if it's evil. It's a better thing to allow it.
He did something evil, and you want to force his family to stay with an evil person.
Yeah.
What kind of monster are you?
So, I don't know what you're saying. The humanist position is something that these two humanists don't think is reasonable.
I'm not going to sit here and twist and get my words twisted. I'm sorry.
You'll sit there. It wasn't dishonest. It was absolutely honest. It was an assessment. You want to force someone to stay married while you think that they are doing an evil thing. I don't care what you think you
sorry,
said.
that's not what I
That's
said.
the consequence
So
of your
I thought you guys
action.
were honest, and we're not.
We
I'm
are
gonna hang
honest.
up.
You're the one that's
Goodbye.
dishonest, Andrew. You're the one that's dishonest because you're talking about what humanism is without any sort of source. Oh, yeah, you hung up. Run away.
Of course.
Run away.
This is what humanism is. Hey, we're both humanists and we disagree. Well, that's dishonest. And also, like, we're not putting words in your mouth. You said it shouldn't be allowed. Like, come on.
Forrest's point was, you gave a scenario where somebody doesn't want to be with their wife anymore, so they're going to cheat on him. And Forrest is like, I'm okay with a divorce under that circumstance. And I am too. I'm also okay with a divorce under any circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody could ever be forced to stay married. I think it's a violation of individual autonomy and sovereignty. But Forrest gave a specific of, hey, under that circumstance, yeah, I'd be okay with it. I think it's maybe the best thing. And your answer was no. And you accused us. You were like, but what he did was evil. Yes. Which means you want to force someone to stay with an evil person who doesn't want to be with them.
What gets me is, like, you don't even, like, I think his, I could have been mishearing, but, like, I think his idea or his assertion was that, like, you could just leave at any time. Somebody just decides they don't want to be with their wife and kids anymore, and that's really evil. I'm still in support of divorce in that situation. But especially with, if we are factoring in adultery, then Jesus would have been cool with it too. So why are you making a deal about it then? Like, it's just so weird. And it goes back to what I was saying. Everything that, like, as I said, it's the second time that I've talked to that dude, and everything that he says, it seems like it's just the first thing that popped into his mind. And it's like, well, humanists don't agree with divorce. Did you think about that at all? Did you check it? Did you look up a source on it? Did you talk to a humanist about it? No, but, like, it seems bad. Like, that's not how it works, bruh. It's not how the thinking works.
See, that's
the most condescending I've ever been on this show, but I'm so sick of that shit, dude.
See, Andrew thinks that there is a God and that Jesus is God and that Jesus, and therefore God, is a humanist. And yet Jesus backed up this notion on marriage that what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. He is advocating for, Jesus is advocating for a put God first view. If you go through, read just the red letter stuff, get yourself a red letter Bible and go through what Jesus says at various points, you're going to find all kinds of things that are not only not consistent with the principles of modern secular humanism, but not consistent with humanism in general. But it's when it becomes obvious that the thing you're advocating for is a worse situation. Like, let's imagine I'm just a terrible human being. I'm in a marriage and I've decided, yeah, I don't care about my vows. I don't care about the promises I made. I don't care about any of that stuff. I'm just going to break my vows and go do whatever I want. And you know what? I'm tired. I've been cheating. I've been doing all kinds of stuff. I'm not, taking care of my family. I'm not taking care of my kids. But that, by the way, is exactly the scenario that even Jesus was okay with, except that the Bible only talks about fornication from a man can put away his wife for fornication. There's no penalty for the man to fuck around.
Right.
That's another one of those naturalistic fallacies where, because the massive investment is for the person who produces the eggs and can be pregnant, they're going to be the one with, they know the kid is theirs. They're going to have to take it. Oh, the men just go and sow the royal oats. Meanwhile, Forrest and I are advocating for a disillusion of the marriage, which is for the betterment of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew wanted to keep, force this person to remain married to somebody who doesn't love them, is going to cheat on them, is, once out. I mean, why on earth would you keep a terrible situation?
Right.
It's wild.
That's, yeah.
All right. We got a couple other theistic callers that I want to make sure we get to. Michael's a first-time caller from somewhere in the USA, pronouns he, him, wants to explain why he believes in God. Michael, you're on with Forrest and Matt. Let's start by just saying kind of a brief description of what God you believe in and then get right into why.
Well, I believe in the Christian God.
Which version?
And to, what do you mean by which version? I would respond by the true version, but then that wouldn't make sense to you.
Yeah, I appreciate you knowing the difference. That's really actually good. Yeah, it's because we get a million different Christian callers a week, and some of them say the God of the Bible exactly as the Bible is written. Some of them, like the last caller, say, well, you take different parts of the Bible that you do and don't like, and the ones that you like, that's actually good. And some people say the Bible isn't actually their metric at all, and that God is just this supernatural father figure in the sky that watches everything we do and cares about how we have sex. And some people say, oh, he doesn't actually care about that. So, like, can you give us like a brief synopsis of the God claim that you have and like where you get it from? And then also please tell us why you believe those things. I'm sorry, I know that's a lot to ask for, but like it's kind of important to make sure we're understanding.
Sure. I would say that the God of the Bible is the true God, and I'm not someone who picks and chooses things that I like and I don't like.
Cool. So everything in the Bible is true or is godly? Do you believe that the Bible is literally true exactly as it's written, or do you believe that just like the God character in the Bible is specifically exactly how it's supposed to be?
I believe that the Bible is true.
Okay. Gotcha.
So I'm assuming that when you tell us why you believe, that this is also a reason why you think we should also believe?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome.
Okay. Awesome.
Go
Sweet.
ahead.
Perfect.
Okay. So I understand that you usually have the position, or almost always have the position, of claims are not evidence. So I have already made a video that I've put online just preemptively to show the world that what I am claiming is true. So
can you give us like just the best kind of evidence, at least? Can you give us just the best kind of evidence so that we don't have to go to your website?
Yeah, we're not here to advertise or promote your video or anything else. What I need you to do is stop fucking talking when I'm talking. What I need you to do is not promote your video.
Please don't speak to me in that. Please don't speak to me in that voice.
Don't speak to you in what?
Don't curse at me.
Don't speak to you in what? What, Michael? What are you trying to tell me?
Please don't curse at me.
Why the fuck should I not curse?
I'm being respectful.
No, you're not. You're talking over me. And you're trying to promote your video on your website. I'll say whatever fucking word I want to say on my own fucking show. Are you going to give your evidence, your reason for God?
Yes.
Cool. Go ahead.
So in 2018, I had a spiritual experience with God where it felt as if a lightning bolt was moving through me for a period of minutes. And then God told me that I am Michael, the messenger of God of the end time.
How did he tell you that?
Friend of mine
was that a literal voice that you heard, or was it a feeling you had? How exactly did he communicate that message?
You're interrupting me. Can I please just finish the story, please?
Okay. Yes, you're on our show, and we need to know what you're talking about.
I'm going to pause you and mute you. We're asking questions for clarity, because we're not just going to let you go on and on and on. If you say 10 things and all of them are ridiculous, then we've got to backtrack. So Forrest was asking specifically for our understanding, in what way did God tell you that you are Michael, the messenger of end times? And then I have a follow-up question about your spiritual experience of lightning bolt. But if you could just answer Forrest's question, then I got one, then we get to continue. That's just the way this works.
Okay. So it was what I would describe as a psychic voice, so to speak. It wasn't audible.
Okay. But was it words or was it an impression?
It was, that's why excuse me, or it's, I could say it was both, perhaps.
Okay. That's
Okay.
fine. I'm only asking for clarity. Now, let me go back, because you say in 2018 you had a spiritual experience where it felt like lightning was moving through your body for minutes. Why do you think that was a spiritual experience? What's the justification for concluding that it was spiritual?
Because a spirit was interacting with me.
How do you know that?
Well, when you experience it, you know.
Okay.
So
what? for clarity, and it's something I heard before. I just and I appreciate that. Thank you, Michael. You're saying that you had an experience that when it happens, you know that it's a spirit, and so that's why you're calling it a spirit. Cool. Continue.
All right, thank you. So I went to go see a Christian friend of mine to tell this to. And I went to his home and I said, hey man, I just had this mystical experience with God. And he cuts me off before I can even tell him what happened. And he says, me too. And he tells me this story about how a year and a half prior to me speaking to him in that moment, he said that God told him that the messenger of God was going to appear to him in a year and a half, and that he was waiting for this person to appear any day now.
Cool.
So that happened. And then we were outside and he turned his back towards me and I was dumbfounded that he even said this to me. I did not expect that at all. And then I felt the Holy Spirit of God descend upon me. And because
How do you know?
I was about to tell him the story that
Michael,
God told me that I was the messenger of God.
Michael.
And I didn't want him
Michael?
to think.
Okay.
Michael.
Just for clarity, when you say you felt the Holy Spirit of God, I'm assuming this is another thing that when it happens, you just know it and there's no way to demonstrate it.
I would say that it was probably similar. If what you experienced in your life when you talk about how you experienced or how you thought it was the Holy Spirit, it may have been similar to that.
Well, if it was similar to that, then you don't have evidentiary warrant.
I'm just explaining the story, and I will have concrete empirical things that you can observe that I'll discuss soon. I understand
can we
that
start
there's
with
some
that?
things that I can't do that in the story.
No, can we start with that? Because Michael, you have to understand, we have people from all sorts of different faiths from all around the world who have told us the exact story you're telling us. I know people personally who have told me that they were baptized in the fire of the Holy Spirit and they read this book of Acts in this way and this new church and they felt this crazy and they felt the Spirit of God and it told them some stuff and I guarantee they believe different things than you do. So we can establish that you believe you felt a thing. Cool, radical. We can get into a million ways why. There's no way for me to test it. There's no point in discussing it. Tell us the things that we should believe and why we should believe it. Like the concrete evidence. Tell us that.
Okay. So I'm just going to speed through make some bullet points. I did not know this passage was in the Bible, that in Daniel 12:1, Michael will appear at the end time for God's people. I discovered that after this experience. And then I asked God, why, what is this spiritual experience? What message am I supposed to give to the world? And I understood that in the Bible, it talks about how the Antichrist will appear at the end time. And I was like,
how do you know you're not that
person here? Excuse me?
I'm sorry. We've asked for evidence several times and you're still just giving us your sermon. So I'm curious to know, how do you know you're not the Antichrist? How do you know that all these experiences weren't actually Satan tricking you into believing that you were this Michael character so that you can actually go do Satan's bidding?
Because God would not allow a prophecy like this to occur and to be fulfilled unless it was true to the Bible.
Doesn't God allow Satan to do lots of things?
Yeah, but he wouldn't allow Satan to entirely replicate prophecies that are so specific. That would defeat the whole purpose of a prophecy.
How do you know? How do you know he wouldn't allow that? Wouldn't that actually be really functional for the prophecy to come true, to have somebody believe such a strong thing, to go out and do all these antichristy things?
No, that would be the opposite of it.
I have a million questions about that, but we'll keep going.
Yeah, let's try and get
All
to
right.
the evidence.
Yeah, I was just about to say it. Like, I was just about to say it. I'm just giving you the
Great,
context.
let's go.
All right. So I asked God who this person is, and my hand started moving on its own. God was moving it, and picked up my phone and typed in a name into Google, pressed enter, and a name was perfectly entered. And I pressed enter, and a person came up. And this person has a global cult I had no idea previously. And he's putting marks on people's bodies. That is a Christian cross that's defaced by the New World Order symbol, the symbol that's on the dollar bill. Novus Ordo Seclorum means New Order of the Ages. So it makes sense that he's putting a new order on top of the Christian
New
order.
World Order.
Michael?
Oh, shit.
Michael?
Not
There's
the
no
New
such
World
thing as a
Order.
New World Order. There's no such thing as a New World Order symbol. But how is any of this evidence that we can verify?
Well, because I just put it on my website for you just to look at. I'm not promoting myself.
shit.
I'm promoting the
No,
truth.
Michael, you're telling me that your hand moved on its own and typed a name into Google. Do you understand how absolutely lunatic that sounds and how I can't verify it? So it doesn't count as evidence for anything.
You can verify that this person exists and has a global cult.
I can't verify that your hand moved on its own. I can't verify that God moved your hand. I can't verify that you aren't someone with a psychological condition who found somebody online and then invented a story about it. I can't verify any of this. Do you have some objectively verifiable evidence for your stories?
Yes. The person who has a global cult and is putting marks on people's bodies, and the interview that I have online of the person who was told by God.
Michael, if you take everything that we can't verify out of your story is I had a religious experience and I found a guy that I don't like, so I think that I'm special and I think he's bad. That's your story. Like that. Everything else you've given us so far is I felt this thing, God did this thing, magic happened, I have no way of backing it up. All you have is I think I'm special, and here's a guy that I think is a bad guy. That's all we've got.
That's bad faith. No.
How? What have you told us that we can test and verify is true, besides you think that you have some magic powers, and this other guy, you don't like him? What can we verify here?
That's why I'm saying just to watch the video, because
I'm not going to watch your fucking video, bro. Just tell us.
Michael. Okay. So, Michael, do you still get messages from God?
Yes.
Did God tell you to call the show today?
No, that was my own free will. That's me trying to inform you what the truth is, and
but
I'm trying to help you understand.
No, Michael, nothing you say is of any use or any help to us. You should ask God what he wants you to say to us, because right now you are doing more harm to your cause than good.
Mm-hmm.
Research Jared Leto.
I'm not gonna.
The actor? The actor, Michael?
Yes. He has a band as well. He's been promoting this.
Why do I need to research Jared Leto, and how is that in any way a response to me pointing out that you are doing harm to your goal? What do I need to know about Jared Leto?
Me to say what you just asked me to say what I think God wants me to say right now, and I told you who the Antichrist is.
No, I didn't say to tell me what you think God wants you to say right now. I asked you if God told you to call in, and I said you should ask God what you should say. Did you ask God what you should say?
Research Jared Leto.
Did God tell you to tell me to research Jared Leto?
I have a question of why you like to nitpick on these tiny little specifics
I'm going to mute your stupid fucking ass so that you can listen to me. And I said stupid fucking ass for a reason, because one, I don't think you're stupid, but I know that me saying fucking pisses you off. There's a limit to how many times I'm going to ask the same question and let you ramble on without it, because this call is beyond bizarre. Now, I'm going to ask you again. One, did God tell you to tell me to research Jared Leto? And two, what is it that you think I should find when I go and research Jared Leto, which I'm absolutely not going to waste time on? Those are the two questions.
The sound beeped while you were speaking.
Yes. Yes, that's to let you know that you're back on. So did God tell you to tell me to research Jared Leto?
Second thing.
Did God tell you to tell me to research Jared Leto?
The second part, I heard that part.
I'm just asking you a fucking question, you fuck. Did God fucking tell you to fucking tell me to fucking research Jared fucking Leto?
You're getting stuck on that.
Yes or no, dude?
Would you
yes
answer
or
the
no?
fucking question, dipshit?
Why is this so important to you? I mean, you're not going along with what I'm saying. I'm telling you where the evidence for God is, and
not only is it not important to me,
why should I care about your
not
question?
only is it not important to me, but we're banning you right now. I've got your phone number. I'm adding your number to ban, and I'm going to delete every portion of your call that attempted to send people to your shitty little website and everything else, because you will not have an honest conversation. Goodbye, jackass.
It sucks that why are you getting caught up on this? Because that's what you do when you want to learn a thing. You ask questions. You don't, this happened. Oh, fuck. All right. Well, I guess I believe you. You ask a question about it and you try to learn more. Like, it really speaks to like his mentality and like where he's coming from, that fucking Morbius is the Antichrist because he typed a name that he couldn't have possibly known. There's no way that he could have known this very famous actor and musician. He had to have been a miracle. My God. Oh, man.
You, Michael, in the middle of this was just like, hey, you should research Jared Leto. And when I ask why and I don't get an answer, and then it's like, did God tell you to tell me to research Jared Leto? I don't know.
It's just so fucking frustrating.
This is one of the things that's incredibly difficult about the job that we do, which is, hi, Kitty, which is there are trolls and prank callers who will absolutely call the show and see how long they can string you on. But there's no easy way to tell the difference between people who sincerely believe something that seems bizarre and people who don't sincerely believe those things. It's essentially Poe's law. Here, once you get down, I'm sure mommy's coming to get you. There's no way to tell the difference. And so we're sitting here and we're affording what could be a troll, or could be someone who's deranged, could be someone who's off their meds, or it could be someone who's truly Michael, the end-time messenger of God. Those are the various possibilities that Forrest and I must sit here and consider. And so what options do we have? Well, we need to ask questions. And if you're not answering my question, the more difficult it is to get you to answer a question that would lead us to clarity, the further away we get from the likelihood that you are Michael, messenger of God. Because God and the truth have nothing to fear from inquiry, would have no difficulty answering any questions, and would not require me to believe in a new world order symbol that someone's marking on people's bodies and how I need to go research Jared Leto.
What's especially frustrating about it, because I mentioned before, I know that, especially in this call, I've been a little bit uncharacteristically willing to laugh at people, and I know that kind of sucks, and I don't try to be that way, but like, building off of what you just said, I hope the audience understands like that. I'm sitting here listening to this, and I know for sure, guarantee 100%, I would bet a good money on it, that dude is now going to go off and tell everybody, yeah, I called these atheists and they were just vulgar and cursing and wouldn't be reasonable and listen to evidence. They wouldn't be, I was trying to tell them the story and they just kept asking all these ridiculous questions and they've closed their eyes to God. They refuse to believe. It was like pearls before swine. I gave them everything and all they wanted to do was curse and lie and mock and all. And so like, it's a lose-lose-lose situation on this side of the camera because no matter what, that's what's going to walk away from it. So, like, sorry if I feel a little bit especially flippant today, but, like, this is the 8 billionth time I've had to hear this exact fucking story from a different person, and it means the same nothing, and it gets us the same nowhere. And the only hope that I have is that somebody watching this right now is on the fence about all this and sees just how absurd that level of brain rot is and maybe starts to free themselves from the chain of that religion. That's all I can hope for. Hopefully laughing about it is better.
You have access to call in studio right now, right?
Yes, I do.
I'm going to set
Which
you
line?
live. I'm going to set you live with John, and I'm going to step away for just a moment. Because I think this is one we're all going to want to get in on, but I know that you're going to want to get in on it even more.
Sure. Yeah, that's
which
fine.
Is John in Texas, a theist who says that atheists try to run from their actual belief system. So, John, I'm going to do you the favor that most callers wish I would do, and I'm going to leave the show temporarily and just let you talk to Forrest if that's okay.
That's fine.
I love in the chat we've got. Oh, I apologize. I was just laughing that in the chat, we just had this guy call in and say, oh, you got to research Jared Leto and it'll tell you about the Antichrist. And here in the chat, I've got somebody saying, just research Nickelback. That's great. I'm sorry. Go on, John. Hi, it's good to talk to you.
All right. So my first thing I wanted to start with was actually like a jab at Matt Dillahunty. So he's not here. I guess I will say it anyways, and you might share the same perspective.
He'll be back shortly.
Yeah, so first of all, he admitted already to saying that he doesn't know what proof it would take for him to believe in God. But if God does exist, then God would know what it would take, and surely he would show it to Matt so that Matt would be a believer, right?
I've said the same thing on multiple occasions, so we don't even have to talk about Matt. I hold the same position. If I saw something truly incredible and amazing and what I could perceive as possibly miraculous, I would have no way of distinguishing that from super duper advanced, crazy, high tech, alien, magical technology or something. Or maybe wizards exist and there's some other shit there. Like if I saw something that was truly, genuinely miraculous by my assumption, I wouldn't be able to distinguish that from something that I was making a mistake about. And so I would say the same thing.
Yeah.
If God is real, God knows for sure what to do and say that would convince me without confusing me. And the fact that that hasn't happened means that he either isn't real or he has no interest in doing that. You know what I mean?
Okay, so convincing. Let's go into that. Let's go into that rabbit hole about proof.
Sure.
And convincing. So, do you think proof or evidence relies in one person to convince another person that this thing is true? Is that what evidence or proof is in your understanding of it? Or is it just the plain fact?
No, evidence is an objective stand. It's a thing that exists. And the way that we read and interpret that evidence can then be derived by us humans as truth, knowledge, whatever from there. I'm probably conflating some words here. I'm not trying to get into an epistemological debate about semantics.
Yeah,
I'm just saying
I'm not that smart.
Evidence is a thing, and we interpret the evidence to derive our understanding of reality. So, like the fact that, for example, we used to think in science that the universe was eternal and that there was, it was just always here and always had been here. That was what the evidence led us to believe. And then we got new evidence of the beginning of the universe, and so we changed our minds based on the new evidence.
Yeah. My point is here, like, let's say there's you believe in math, right? Do you think math is objective, or is that a subjective thing too? Is there anything subjective in reality? Objective?
I'm sorry. There was yes, I believe in math, but there was a follow-up question that I didn't catch.
I said, is math objective, or is it a subjective thing in your opinion?
Yes, I am objectively holding up 2 fingers. I am now objectively holding up 2 more fingers. Therefore, objectively, I am holding up 4 fingers. That is objective reality. Yes.
Good. So you hold that position that math is objective. So if I show you a mathematical formula that is showing the objective formula to the universe, is that for you proof that the universe is what I say it is based off of these numbers? Is that evidence?
I'm going to nitpick a little bit here. Yeah, I'm going to nitpick a little bit here. I don't know what it means to say a mathematical formula for the universe, but I'm assuming what you're getting at is...
We're talking about God, like proof for God. If I had a formula saying, look, this is the proof, mathematical formula for God, this is the proof for it.
There is not, John, there is not and could not be a mathematical formula for God, because God isn't mathematics. It's like
that's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, it's like saying here's the mathematical formula.
What God is.
It's like saying here's the mathematical formula for love. There is no variable for love. Love isn't a part of mathematics. That's just not something that would work.
We don't know what God is. Do you agree? Or do you know what God is?
We know what God isn't, and God isn't merely mathematics.
I mean, maybe it is, but like, I guess my big thing is, I don't know what you're trying to drive at here, and I'm trying to give you the benefit of the doubt of like just kind of going with the vibe of what I think you're saying, but like that's kind of a sticking point for me. I don't know. You said the mathematical equation of the universe, and now you're saying the mathematics of God. It sounds to me like you're trying to imply that because like numbers of things exist, that therefore math as a abstract concept of manipulating those numbers is some sort of like definitive and how do you say, like causal force of things, like that there's some field of mathematics that is deliberately making changes to the universe, like it's an intelligent agent. Is that what you're driving at?
I'm saying that if there was a such thing, if you want proof for God, it doesn't necessarily rely in me, in you, what the hell is that called? Being convinced that this is true. Me showing you proof that doesn't require you to be convinced. The truth is the truth, regardless of if you're convinced or not. That's
yes,
I
agree.
So God doesn't need to convince you of anything. Yeah, I can.
John, stop. Do you have a mathematical formula that proves God? Do you have any evidence or that is backed by objectively verified, or do you have any argument backed by objectively verifiable evidence that demonstrates that God exists?
Well, yeah, our concepts of God when it comes to like a conscious, creative, infinite being. Yeah, we've talked about this, but you have different perspectives. You have different beliefs.
No, John.
So
John,
answer the question,
John,
please.
Stop fucking lying and listen. Do you have objectively verifiable evidence to support an argument that God exists? Yes or no?
I said yes. The concept.
Then what is it?
Infinite creative.
Then what is it? Present, John, present the objectively verifiable evidence now.
You're looking at all around it. You're talking to it right now. I am the evidence.
This is why conversations with you are a waste of time, John.
We are the fact that we exist.
Every time I asked you for objectively verifiable evidence, and your answer is you're looking at it. Well, right now I'm shut up. Right now I'm looking at a fucking camera. I'm not dropping him. Right now I'm looking at a camera. Why don't you stop pretending you know what I'm looking at and stop pretending that atheists try to run from their actual belief system, because I'm actually an advocate for scientism, which a lot of atheists don't. And why don't you do what you claim you can do and present the objectively verifiable evidence? State it and identify how it is in fact objectively verifiable evidence for a God. You can't. You don't. You never do.
I think it's more complicated than like me showing you an apple falling and saying that's gravity. Like God is a more complex.
I'm muting you. I didn't say anything about an apple or anything else. So when put on the test, when put on the spot to actually present your evidence, instead of telling me what the evidence is, you tell me what the evidence isn't. Congratulations on doing an incredible tap dance, John. I leave you to Forrest.
the fact
I
that
have a couple
the
of questions.
fact that
John,
everything
are
exists,
you
I don't know what
do
to say,
you
like,
do you think that I'll wait for you. John, do you think
No,
that
no, go ahead.
evolution is real?
No, I don't. I believe in adaptation. I don't jump to the whole crazy evolution theories and
Just so we're
like,
clear,
conclusions.
adaptation can mean a lot of things, even in an evolutionary construct. But that's not neither here nor there. I
No,
have
it means one
proof.
thing.
It really
It
doesn't.
only means one thing.
I promise it does. Adaptation has a colloquial
Okay.
term and has a scientific term, and in the scientific realm, it could mean a characteristic or the process of acquiring that characteristic. It has a variety of meanings. I'm not sure which one you're going for, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't.
Hey,
Because
Forrest,
what I'm saying is, yeah,
do
Wait,
you have
Matt?
objectively verifiable evidence for evolution?
that's exactly where I was going. I'm glad you asked that, Matt. Yes, I have objectively verifiable evidence of evolution, and I wonder if John
What
is
is
interested in hearing it. You're looking around at it. You're looking at it. Actually, your body is covered in vestigial structures
funny.
that tell you the story of evolution, and so do all of the
He's not
other
only
living
funny, he's
things
right.
around you. I'm actually being serious. That's the thing, is that like your body and every other living thing around you tells the story of evolution, as does the fossil record, as does the genetic record, as does homological and analogous structures, as do embryology. So many. There's a lot of other things that all verify evolution independently and in different directions and in different ways. They all point to the same way, and you're looking around them at all times. You were always at a family reunion. Isn't that great?
You can even go.
Do you buy what I'm saying?
Abiogenesis has never been achieved in a lab.
Abiogenesis has nothing to do with evolution. Abiogenesis has nothing to do with evolution.
Okay.
John called in
What
to
is
accuse
abiogenesis?
atheists. John
Whatever,
called
never
in to accuse atheists of being dishonest, but John can't stop being dishonest. Forrest gave objectively verifiable evidence to support evolution, and John can't handle that, so he immediately tries to divert from evolution to abiogenesis, but he can't just do that, because what he then says is that abiogenesis has never occurred in a lab. Whether or not something has occurred in the lab is completely secondary from whether or not something occurred and whether or not we have evidence for it, and whether or not we have evidence for abiogenesis is independent from whether or not we have evidence for evolution. Just like I have objectively verifiable evidence for man's common descent from other great apes, and that's the fusing of chromosome 2. There you go.
Mhm.
That's an objectively verifiable piece of evidence that fully supports common ancestry amongst the great apes. What do you got, John? Can you come up with anything even close to as succinct or accurate or honest as either Forrest or myself have for evolution, for your God?
I know. I just
that's
appreciate
the
you
correct
saying
answer.
you're
Good job, John.
scientism guy.
That's the first honest thing you've said, John.
All right. I got nothing else to say. At least you admitted to being a scientism person, because I knew it.
Yes.
I said it. I knew it.
You knew it.
And
I've been
more
saying it
people
for
need to admit
decades.
it.
If you didn't know it, how fucking stupid do you have to be?
Matt, your last name is Dillahunty.
gotta go.
I fucking knew it.
I gotta go.
Yeah, you
Hey,
gotta go.
John, before you go, do you believe in like the nuclear
he's gone.
theory of atoms? Oh, fuck. I was going to show him some objective proof of atomic theory, and I was going to see if you had anything to say about it.
It's so wild. Hey,
Can't
I'm
wait to talk
calling
to you
in
again,
because
John.
you atheists are afraid to identify your real worldview. Well, first of all, not all atheists advocate for scientism, but I do. It took me a little while, so it's not like I've been saying it for 20 years. Early on, I know I did deny that scientism was my worldview, but scientism is one of two. It has two things, two views in the same way that atheism could be hard atheism and soft atheism, where hard atheism is I am convinced there are no gods, and soft atheism is I am not convinced that any gods exist. Similarly, I take a similar view of scientism, where hard scientism is science is the only way of knowing. I'm not saying that. As a matter of fact, I completely reject that. There are plenty of ways of knowing something that aren't necessarily scientific. But most of those ways of knowing are things that we can, at least in principle, investigate scientifically. Like if I know I'm hungry, that's me getting knowledge, not through a scientific method, but through a process that can be explored and investigated through scientific principles. We can do an MRI of my brain. We can check the nerve receptors. We can see what's going on between my stomach and my brain, or, is it a fiction, anything else? Similarly, there's the weak version of scientism, which is science is the most consistently reliable, best method of understanding reality that we have. And that's the scientism that I absolutely think is true and would advocate for. And if you have some other way of knowing something, you would have to use the methods of science to demonstrate its reliability is more reliable. So anybody who wants to claim that scientism is, there are other ways of knowing. Yeah, there are plenty of ways of knowing. But is there a more reliable way of knowing facts about reality? And if you think you have one, feel free to demonstrate it. If you're going to say that science can't give you knowledge about God, but your sensus divinatus can, well, you have to then demonstrate that such a sense exists and what its reliability is. And that's going to be very difficult in a world where there are over 1,000 denominations that all identify as Christian, in addition to all of the other religions that are out there, any of which can appeal to their own sensus divinatus, which, by the way, for those who don't know, is a divine sense. It means I have something in my soul or brain that detects God. It's a God detector. But I can't demonstrate that it can actually detect a God, and I can't demonstrate how reliable it is at anything else. It's hilarious.
It's wild, man. It's fucking, I don't know. It's frustrating. I wish you would have stayed on so we could have talked about abiogenesis as well, because I would love to hear, what his opinions are on that. I would love to go over some of the actual verifiable, testable evidence that we have for it. Just see if any of that matters at all, or if it's just, no. It's just beliefs.
You're
it's
a
all magic.
scientism I knew it. I knew you were a scientism guy.
That's what it is. I knew you believed the thing that you say you believe, you son of a bitch.
I knew you were a godless heathen. And that's actually something that comes up. Cool. One of our theist callers called back. I was really looking forward to that. Thanks, Dex. I'll be right with you next. It's one thing that's happened for years from callers to all of these shows is this. There needs to be some kind of gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
There doesn't need to be a gotcha.
We could just talk.
Yeah. And believe it or not, if any question I ask comes off as if it's a gotcha question, it's because you have a fundamentally flawed epistemology related to your position. There's no gotchas with the truth. The truth has nothing to fear from inquiry. If there's a true thing, there is no question I could ask that isn't fallacious or in the category of when did you stop beating your wife, which, by the way, you could also answer with never started. So it's a trick question. Me saying what is the objectively verifiable evidence that supports your position could never be a trick question. Me saying, define what God it is that you're advocating for is not a trick question. It's just wild. But anyway, we've got actual calls, and I want to see this because I don't even know what this call is necessarily about. But Dex is calling from Detroit. So Dex, you had a question or comment or something for Forrest and myself about atheist etiquette. So
let's do it.
Welcome to the show.
Hello, Matt, Forrest. Hope you guys are doing well today.
Yep.
Well, it depends on who you talk to. I'm doing all right.
Yeah, I've heard some of the calls. It's been a wild ride. Sorry I bring things down a little more. I had a recent death in the family, and by recent I mean today. My father left us today, and
your father died today.
I'm sorry.
I just want to make sure I heard right. You're saying your father died today?
Yes. Around 12 noon.
Okay.
Fuck.
So, tell me before you get into the other stuff. Tell me a little bit about your dad, real quick, just so I get a picture. Because, and don't take this the wrong way, Dex. I'm happy to talk to you. If my dad died at noon today, I can't imagine I'd be calling somebody to talk about it. And that you have my full attention, and I'm very, very sorry for your loss. But Tell me about your dad real quick.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, he made it to 83. My mom is still with him. She's about 76 now, and he had a really long, full life. He did a lot of cool stuff. Really cool guy. But in the final days, he had a stroke, and so he was basically bedridden, and we were caring for him as best we could, but we were just kind of watching him waste away. And today he just finally kind of gave up the ghost, and I feel like he was kind of almost relieved to go. Really, this just wasn't the quality of life he was used to. He was the guy who always went out and did things and knew people, and then he was basically like confined to a room. And we had a lot of good healthcare providers come in. They do just enormously good work, and we were here to care for him as much as we could. But he, and that was kind of what I wanted to talk about. Yeah, everyone is just saying, well, he's in a better place now, or God chose to take him. This was the time to take him and all that. And I don't really believe in any of that, honestly. Things just happen, and
I have difficulty.
I guess we all deal with things differently. I kind of wanted to call back and talk to you. I kind of knew this was coming, of course, as I think that indicated. And so I did have a question, and I figured today was the best time to ask it, which was simply about, I think I put it down as atheist etiquette. So when you're in a situation with a family, whether they're at the hospital or at the funeral or wherever, and everyone is throwing around the usual religious things, God took him and all of this. And if you are not feeling that, I guess I'm just asking kind of individually, and I understand there's no guiding principle that all atheists have to do this particular thing or should do that. But I'm just looking for some insight. When everyone wants to do a group prayer, for example, do you actually tell people, no, I just do not believe in that? Or do you maybe just close your eyes and pretend? Or is that lying?
So for me, this is really easy. I'm pretty sure there are no funerals that I've been to or that I'm likely to be at where people won't know that I'm an atheist. And so what I say and do depends on a couple of different things. So if the deceased was religious and people are generally sharing a similar religious sentiment to what they shared, then I just keep my mouth shut. I'm there. Funerals are for the living. They're not for the dead. So I'm there to be supportive of the other people and to get support for me, for somebody that we've all lost. And it's not generally the time and place to cause a scene. If somebody were to ask me to pray, to speak and pray, I would politely decline and pass it on to somebody else. But nobody, let's be honest, nobody that I'm at a funeral with is going to ask me to pray. If it were someone who I thought, if Brad's in chat, hi buddy, love you. If my mom or dad died, I'm not going to say anything about people talking about their religious stuff. If I die and Brad's there and somebody tries to turn it into a religious service, I sincerely hope that he would stand up and say, this is not what Matt would have wanted. You guys should be ashamed of yourselves. But other than something like that, it's about having all the people who lost someone try to be supportive of each other, just in the same way that I'm not going to turn Christmas into, Jesus wasn't actually born on December, whatever. Wasn't born at all. So yeah, it's probably much easier for me in the position I'm in, but my primary thinking at all times at a funeral is, I'm here because I lost someone and they lost someone. Let's tell good stories. Let's comfort each other at this time of loss. People are going to say stupid things. They're going to say stupid things forever. I just let them at the funeral. Brad said he would stop the
Yeah.
entire service. That's why my brother's my favorite person.
Yeah, I have similar opinions. Like if there have actually been several times in my life where like a group of religious people have been doing a prayer for a variety of reasons, and invited me to participate, and I just politely decline. I'm just like, hey, thank you for that. I'm not gonna, because I think that it would be, not only is it uncomfortable for me, but also I think that it would be disrespectful for me to participate in their religious ceremony, knowing that I'm not into, you know what I mean? That's kind of, and so like, I was just at a funeral a couple of weeks ago, and everybody there was Christian, and everybody prayed, and I just kind of just stood there, and they talked about, and I used that time to reflect on my friend that had died, and to think on him, and to think about his family, and hope that they were okay, and like I used that time for myself, because as Matt pointed out aptly, funerals are not for the dead, they're for the living, and that's what that was for. So like, if they had asked me to lead an invocation, I would not have. If they had asked me to say something nice about my friend, I absolutely would have. If they had come to me and told me, and many people did, oh, he's in heaven and he's all these wonderful things, I just would have smiled and said, just, that's lovely, and carried on with my life. Or I would have added just something nice that I had to say about him. I just wouldn't have participated in the religious language. There's no reason at that moment to be like, no, there's no reason to be that way. I just, if someone comes to me using this religious language in these contexts, I'll just let them, because I know that's comforting for them. And then I'll just say as many nice things as I can about the person that I knew. And that's it. And that's all I've got. And if they want me to participate in a prayer or in a religious service, I just don't. I'll just hang out in the back of the room and be there in physical support of the people who are alive, who are grieving. That's all that matters at that moment. So, yeah, I think you already have mentioned that people around you were saying this and you didn't really vibe with it. I'm going to go ahead and bet you didn't like chastise them or anything. I think you're already there. You've got to find, I hope that you find your own space and your own, people to grieve with in the way that you need to, because you deserve to be able to grieve and process this just as much as anybody else does. Your lack of this particular kind of religion does not preclude your ability or your right to that kind of dignity and that kind of mental stability. So, I sincerely hope that the people around you will give you as much grace and leeway, and not try to give you a sermon when you process things in your way. And if they do, then fuck, man, I believe we have a Discord or something that you can go to talk to some people that'll just be kind. Yeah, that's what I would say, man.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you said your mom's surviving your dad, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think,
and she's
for me,
going. I'm
yeah,
sorry,
I
what?
just think for me, if my dad died, my only care and thought at the funeral would be seeing to my mom's needs, and obviously other family members as well, but primarily my mom's needs.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at now. I went with the hospital when the EMTs came to take him. I went with them so that she could just stay here, and then I came back as soon as I could. And I'm just gonna stay here with her for a while, as long as she needs.
Yeah. Well, Dex, I appreciate you calling. We are very sorry for your loss. One thing that you mentioned that I wanted to add just one little note on is, when people say stuff like he's in a better place, and obviously I don't believe that, and I don't believe it, there's life after death at all. But what plays in my head is the person's probably trying to say something nice. He's probably flailing about intellectually and emotionally for something that they don't have a good way to put a spin on it. And sometimes, even though I would say they're not in a better place, it's like they're not in any place from my perspective, I have to acknowledge that being dead, while generally not preferable to being alive, can occasionally be preferable to being alive when your quality of life is such that, and there's no likelihood of it improving, that it's not so much that you're in a better place, but you can spin that as you are no longer here in a worse place, that your continued existence would be worse than not existing. And it sounds like, your dad was an outgoing person who was essentially sidelined and miserable because of a stroke. And it is true that when we look at things and we see at least they're not suffering anymore, I would just look at he's in a better place as one way to phrase that. A way that's certainly colored by someone's religious beliefs about an afterlife, but is really about who we are as humans and how we try to process stuff. Because religions have done an absolutely horrific job of preparing us for the eventuality of death. If we taught people that death was an inevitable part of life, that people don't go to a better place, but they might be better off under certain circumstances, I think we would do a much better job with death with dignity and funerals and all these things as well. And this is going to be opportunistic, Dex, but on Tuesdays, Dave Warnock does a show called Dying Out Loud. For those who don't know, Dave has a terminal diagnosis with ALS. And so death with dignity is something that comes up on that show frequently. Yeah. Just, oh my God, just keeps going and going and going. These subjects come up on the show quite frequently. I'm very glad you called us today, but for other people who might have similar questions, or you want thoughts that go beyond what Forrest and I think, definitely consider calling in on Tuesday.
Okay, thanks a lot. I'll look out for him.
Thanks, Dex.
Right. Take care, Ness.
Go love your family.
It's hard for me because I always respond to all these situations with humor. I think humor is the best defense against the universe. And so, like, I have a friend whose dad died, and I was there to comfort him and talk to him and all these things, and we kind of spent some time together. And like a couple of weeks later, my dad died, and he calls me and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "You son of a bitch! If I knew it was contagious, I wouldn't have hung around you." Like that was my whole thing. So like, just I feel for Dex, because like for me, I would be when my dad died, it was my opportunity to crack as many jokes as possible, and that's how I deal with it, and that's how the people around me deal with it. To be in a situation where people are, more religious or are at more solemn or processing things in a way that you're not, it must feel incredibly isolating. So I feel bad that they would not be able to grieve and process with those people simultaneously with them. That must be incredibly fucking cold and shitty. So, man, hope that gets better for Dex, for real.
For the record, I wouldn't want anybody to co-opt my death or try to leverage my death as a way of proselytizing any religious view. On the other hand, at my funeral, if somebody prays, well, obviously I'm dead and it's not going to bother me. I wouldn't want it to necessarily be a part of the service, but I'm fine with people, praying and whatever else. I would, people are like, "Oh, I want it to be a funeral, not a funeral. I want to have fun and let's tell jokes and everything." Ideally, would I like to see people tell happy stories and jokes? Sure. Do I think there should be a big "You're gay, homie" banner at yes. Put it up. Do whatever the hell you want. And all of the detractors and all of the troll callers who've called over the years who want to, "Oh, Matt's this, Matt's that," say it all. Do whatever video you want. Be like, "Ha ha ha, that atheist jackass is dead. I always told you he was a big piece of shit, or he was gay, or he was this, or he was that." Do it all. Because at least it comes from a place where we as a species, we as a community are still here. What would be absolutely awful is if my death wasn't just the end of me, but was the end of everything. If we don't take care of issues like climate change or the nuclear clock, ticking down, or all these other things, if there's nobody left to make fun of me when I'm dead, that would be really sad.
Plus, even making fun of you, that's part of the memory. That's part of you living on that way. It's just still sweet. It's culture.
All of my friends, including my fake friends, because there's a couple still, but mostly my real friends, make fun of me, have a party, do whatever you want. If you want to cry, cry. If you want to laugh, laugh. If you're like, I'm glad I don't ever have to listen to that fucker again, cool. I'm dead. You can't possibly offend me. And because I know all of that now, you can come up to me at an event and say, when you die, I'm going to come pee on your grave. And I can be like, cool. I consult your local, laws, because it may not be legal for you just to come out and piss on somebody's grave. But if you want to, cool. I had a problem with Lucian Greaves, the head of the Satanic Temple. I don't know if we ever had a conversation about this, but he went to Fred Phelps's mom's gravestone and rubbed his dick on it. And I was like, that does nobody any good. And what did Fred Phelps's mom ever do to you or any of us other than, raise a bigot? It's okay, this is true. But the thing to remember is Fred Phelps's mom is also Nate Phelps's grandma. Yep. And Nate Phelps is a friend of mine. And one of the Phelps family who made it out. I miss Nate. I miss you. I know COVID and everything's sidelined. I can't wait till we're in the same place and get to hang out again. But, and I don't think Nate's going to be overly bothered by that, but it's like, from a PR perspective, how did that do something good? Like it would be different if you went and took a big dump on Jerry Falwell's grave or Fred Phelps' grave, than to go after
their mother,
their mom. There's other people. And even then, Jerry Falwell, when he died, I try not to celebrate death, but I was not the slightest bit sad. And yet I can still recognize that man had people who loved him and cared about him. He was their family, was important. It does mean I get nothing out of shitting on the dead. So
you don't have to be like thrilled that somebody's dead, but you don't. Yeah, I'm just like, I think you said the nail on the head. Like, I don't have to be sad that you're gone, but I'm not going to throw a fucking celebration about it because that just hurts people who likes you. That's the same way I feel when people are talking about when the Queen died. Like, I also am not a fan of monarchy. However, there's a lot of sad people right now, and this does nothing for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. We got a couple more calls, and I don't know for sure if we'll get to all of them or not, because we're always going to prioritize theist callers. So for the non-theist callers who are on there, hang on. We'll definitely try and get to you. But we have Chase somewhere in the United States of America wants to explain why he believes in the Orthodox Christian religion. So welcome, Chase. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a little chilly where I'm at. How are you guys?
All right. How chilly is it?
It's what is it, like 25?
Ooh. Okay. I'm glad I'm in Texas.
I was going to say with or without beans. That was my question.
Yeah, right. No, that's not chilly to most people. That's scary.
Exactly.
But yeah, where would you guys want to start? And I think I may have a delay, so I'm gonna pause an extra bit before I talk. So sorry if I accidentally interrupted.
No, that's fine. No, I appreciate that. Fine. And we try. There's even a delay between me and Forrest, and so we've bumped heads a number of times. There's something about there's audio desyncs. I'm just glad that the whole show goes out in roughly this time. So you're part now. When you say Orthodox Christian religion, are you saying like the Orthodox Church? Like I debated Father Hans Jacobsy years ago, who's a priest in the Orthodox Church. Or are you just talking? So that is it?
Yes, sir. Yeah, Eastern Orthodox. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I guess start wherever it is that you want to start, because I mean, you've picked a particular version of Christianity. I guess, what is it about that one that you think is distinct, and more true than like my Southern Baptist upbringing?
Yeah. So just on that, I mean, we can go the epistemic historical route of, the fact that I can read what all of the early church fathers believed from, St. Polycarp, St. Irenaeus, who were people that were ordained and had laying on of hands by apostles all the way up through to today. I can see what they believed and see that my church aligns with what they believe. That's why I would choose Orthodoxy over these other ones. And of course, there's theological issues, for instance, of them not properly distinguishing something called nature and person, and a bunch of other theological things that I don't think would be very interesting for this conversation. But if someone was like, oh, I believe in Christ through whatever means, then I could go, historical route and the theological route. But the reason that I'm not an atheist is because I don't believe that atheism can account for the things that make knowledge itself even possible.
So I hear a lot of stuff that I'm going to have to take a back seat on because I am not educated in the history of this religion. I'm sure Matt will do a much better job at that. My whole thing would just be that very last thing that you said, but I'm going to wait because I'm sure Matt has a lot to say about the religious aspect of it, having debated a dude what runs the place.
Well, so first of all, pointing to the tradition of the church fathers, you can point to a particular lineage and consistency there, but still that doesn't get to the truth of what they believe, whether or not. And I realize you were presenting that as here's why I would pick Orthodoxy over, let's say, Southern Baptist or whatever else. My concern, and I probably should have done this instead of the Baptist thing, is whether or not it's true. But when you say the reason you're not an atheist is because atheists can't account for, or atheism can't account for knowledge. It's not supposed to. It's actually not even a thing. It doesn't account for anything, and couldn't and wouldn't. Really. So if instead what you're saying is that a world without a God cannot have knowledge, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is that the model that you're using?
Yeah, it's that based on the foundational lack of belief in any type of God. And I can, not to go on a tangent, I can, refute other religions, but just focusing on your worldview and my worldview, right? Just based on that foundational aspect, it instantly makes things like the ontology of language, pointing out real concepts that exist out in the world, impossible. And it instantly makes the atheist a relativist.
How? That's so. That was like three things. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
I had difficulty following which one you were talking about. So let's try this. There's on theism, on the proposition that there's God. You're saying under that assumption or under that model, knowledge is accountable for, as is the ontology of language. But on atheism, or if there is not a God, then there's no account possible for knowledge or language?
Pretty much. But what I would say is that with any attempted theistic worldview, and again, like I said, I would argue against them and refute them, and I do that, they can at least get a step forward because they'll say that the world has objective purpose behind it. With atheism, if there's no objective purpose or telos but to the world, there can be no objective meaning to the world. It's a logical fulfillment that can't be.
I'm sorry. I want to clarify one more thing, and it may require you kind of repeating your point again. And I apologize if this is redundant. I just want to make sure I really understand. Is that you keep saying like atheistic worldview or atheism, and Matt keeps saying like whether or not there's a God, and I'm trying to suss out which you're arguing for here. Are you saying that without a God existing, then there's no explanation for language, knowledge, no meaning to the world, blah, all these, or are you saying if you don't believe in a God, then you cannot understand those things? What are you saying, that there must be a God because these things don't make sense without it? Or are you saying it's more reasonable to believe in a God because you can't make sense of these things unless you believe it? Which one are you trying to say?
I'm saying both, but we can just go with, if you don't believe in a God, your worldview cannot account for the possibility of those things like knowledge, ethics, metaphysics.
Okay, so, strongly disagree then. That's fine. I just want to make sure I understand what we're talking about.
Oh, gotcha. I know you guys disagree, and that's part of the fun, right?
Right. I just want to make sure I knew what I was disagreeing with, if anything.
So, You mentioned a couple things. One of them being objective meaning or purpose. I don't see that there is objective meaning or purpose as an intrinsic function of existence. Instead, meaning and purpose are things that we imbue reality with.
Yeah, and I know that you see it that way, and because of that, you can't make any universal claims such as truth, false, right, wrong, better, worse. Because
no, that's not true. First of all, better, worse are relatives.
Exactly. Everything will be relativism in your worldview.
Well, I have no problem with relativism. I have no problem with tentative positions, but the fact that there's no objective meaning or goal or purpose or intended there doesn't mean that there aren't objective facts about reality, and it doesn't mean that we can't detect those. We may not be able to, like, we have no solution to the problem of hard solipsism. So for me, truth is that which comports with reality. And then the next question is, well, how do you know what reality is? I'm stuck with the reality that I experience. And then we use the best tools we can to try to figure out what's going on. But if you're like, oh, you can't ever demonstrate that something is like capital T absolute truth. Yes, I agree. There's no solution to the problem of hard solipsism. And having a God or believing in a God doesn't solve those things either. And so it seems like you're just saying, oh, without a God, the universe can't have any objective meaning. And I'm like, okay. And from there, you can't make statements of absolute certainty. Okay. I've been very vocal about nobody can get to absolute certainty about anything ever. And citing a God doesn't solve any of these problems, because you'd need to be able to demonstrate that this God was there. And then you'd need to be able to demonstrate how this God solves those problems. Just believing that there's a God there doesn't solve those problems at all. What's the objective purpose of existence?
Well, in my worldview, all of creation was created for communion with God. To address the things that you had said prior, real quick, just a side note, because I know it's not the crux of what we're talking about right now, but with hard solipsism, I'm sorry, what?
I'm going to ignore everything that you say, because I'm trying to take notes, but I can't keep up with 4 different side things. The thing that you just said was, I said, what's the objective? I said, what's the objective purpose of reality? And you said, in my worldview, which makes it subjective.
No, here's the thing is that do you think that subjective just means that an individual can just perceive something and engages with something? Is that what you think subjective means?
Subjective means it is contingent on an individual's perception.
Okay, yeah. So subjective, I don't think that, for one, subjective to me means that it's only going to be true for that individual, like opinions, and there can be true subjective things.
No. I didn't say it was true only for that person.
I know. I'm telling you my view of what subjective was.
500 people can all have the same opinion, the same subjective view, but it is subjective still. It is not an objective truth. The fact that multiple people might share a belief doesn't make it objective.
Yes, I agree. I was just telling you what I believe subjective was. I wasn't putting words in your mouth or anything like that.
Well, I told you what subjective was, and you objected to it.
Just to back up, because you, sorry.
And then you agreed with me. So go ahead.
I don't think I agreed with you. I was giving you what we have different worldviews, right? So I was explaining what these things mean, because sometimes people will go, oh, well, God's a person, God's personal, so now everything's subjective, and that's a category error. That's why I was unpacking that. But anyway, back up to the things you said before about there's no solution for hard solipsism. With hard solipsism, a solipsist can't actually argue, because to use words would be to differentiate different ontological concepts that they're picking out. So a solipsist can't actually argue. The second they try to speak, they're contradictory. So that's hard solipsism refuted.
No, that's not hard solipsism refuted, and you've been hung up on. Here's the thing. When I ask you what's the objective purpose to reality, because you're calling in to argue for an objective purpose, and then you ask me what I mean by subjective, and I define subjective in a way that you reject, and then you turn around and agree with that definition. And by the way, I've got Here's a definition of subjective open. Something that is subjective is based on personal opinions and feelings rather than facts. It is subject to an individual's perceptions. That's separate from this. When you say you've solved hard solipsism, which, by the way, philosophically, any decent philosopher will tell you there's been no demonstrated confirmation and or there's been no demonstrated solution to the problem of hard solipsism. And your thing is, I've solved hard solipsism because I'm going to assert that solipsists can't argue, because the second they use language, they've defeated themselves. You are no longer worth talking to. And because we are now at the 5 o'clock point in the show, and we have run our limit all the way to there, I'm not interested in people calling up just to make assertions about, oh, I've solved hard solipsism, because if solipsism were true, you couldn't use language. That's just an assertion. Language is an invention of us. You're basically suggesting that we wouldn't be able to think, there'd be no cognition. And so also you went with there's no objective this, or there's no knowledge. Belief is the state of being convinced that something is true or likely true. Knowledge is a belief held to a high degree of certainty, so high that it would be absurd to consider that it were false. But knowledge doesn't mean true. Knowledge is about our perception of our evidential warrant for beliefs, and how confident we are is in the colloquial sense. That's it. I know that in philosophy, it's justified true belief. Justified true belief as a definition for knowledge has a number of different problems. How do you define what's justified? How do you get to truth? I'm not convinced that you can get to truth. That's why science, which is the most consistently reliable method of understanding reality, does not make proclamations of truth or certainty. Instead, it creates models and theories that are the best attested to explanations given our current information. The problem...
Sorry, go ahead. I apologize.
The problem with the theistic, hey, here's why I'm an Eastern Orthodox blah, 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 and I think I've solved hard solipsism, is that they want to just make assertions that, well, without God, we can't have objective meaning. Okay, then we don't have objective meaning. Well, without God, you can't reason. And yet I seem to be doing it, and you still have no evidence of God. You can assert all day that I can't reason. Well, there can't be any reasoning. That's like saying there can't be mathematics, as if somehow a universe without a God wouldn't have the concept of quantities, the concept of set theory. That's all that's needed. The foundations of A, not A, of identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle. It doesn't matter what the foundations of those are. It doesn't matter whether they're inviolate or not. What matters is that we can process and conceive of those. And at any point in this, when I say, here's what I believe about reality, all of my beliefs are tentative and subject to revision, because that's what science teaches us is the right way to go about it. Because it's religions that assert absolutes. It's religions that assert objective moral principles. It's religions that assert objective meaning or purpose to a life. And you can assert that all day long. You can assert it all you want. But how can you demonstrate? Well, you can't even argue. Yeah, that's where I stop. And that's where I'm going to hang up almost every time. If your assertion is that the atheistic worldview, that a worldview where there's not a God, means that no one can think, speak, reason, that essentially a brain can't function, that there is no way of processing input and evaluating which inputs are more consistent with the facts of reality and less consistent with the facts of reality, you've lost. You are nothing but an assertion machine. And I am completely disinterested in you sitting here trying to argue with someone who you think is borrowing from your worldview. I'm not borrowing from your worldview. There is nothing. My fundamental presuppositions, my fundamental preconditions are logic, identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle. Well, you can't justify those, Matt. And neither can you? Saying there's a God that acts as a foundation for logic is an assertion. You haven't even and cannot even demonstrate that logic requires a foundation, and yet you're trying to give it one. Meanwhile, you have nothing to back up the foundation other than your assertion that there must be one, and you're the only one with one. This presuppositionalist nonsense is embarrassingly bad, both from a philosophical standpoint and from a theological standpoint. Anyway, thanks, Forrest.
It reminds me a lot of what is that guy, Saiten Bergen or whoever? You know what I mean?
Yes, he's
guy.
No longer allowed to do this, though.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I would love to hear that story. But like,
he was involved in some sexually inappropriate behavior, and his church prohibited him, I guess, is the way I heard it, from continuing to be a public apologist.
Goodness. But yeah, no, that's exactly what his whole call reminded me of, is this thing like you can't have an opinion on this unless you believe like I do, because my belief is what allows you to think things. And it's like that's kind of the same.
To be fair,
and like
to be fair, your summary has a couple of problems in it that I know they're going to pick apart, because they're not saying you have to believe it. But
yes,
also,
I am making a hyperbole and a straw man of this argument in order to summarize my frustration. It's good that I point that out. You're right.
But also the caller is not at all like Cy. The caller actually understands and knows the subject. You can already tell within just a couple minutes of talking. Cy Ten Bergenkate was someone who just parroted what he heard and didn't understand from like Greg Bonson and others. This guy understood it considerably better. I don't want to put him in the, well, you have to borrow from my, yeah.
Right. That's fair. That's just something that jumped to me whenever I was hearing his talk. But you know the two better than I do, so you can make the distinction more easily. And that's a fair thing for you to say. For me, it was just frustrating because I know the call couldn't have gone anywhere, but like I wanted badly to kind of pick apart his idea of like, well, there's no objective meaning and there's no it seems like he was saying that there's like this evil nihilistic worldview that's necessary to fall into. I am a nihilist. And I have that ideology. I have that worldview. I would love to talk to you about like objective meaning and purpose and how I don't think it's a thing and how I think that's a good thing. And like, maybe we come to an agreement there. But like, it seemed like that was like a big hill to get over, you know? You can't have, there's no such thing as knowledge. There's no such thing as language. There's no such thing as purpose. There's no such thing as meaning. Like, sure. And like,
yeah, It is the common thing of, well, if the atheist worldview is true, then there's no objective morality. Okay. And your point is? Well, then how can you say anything's right or wrong? Because we can use relativistic, subjective, situational ethics, where we define a principle that we think is going to make the world a better place and evaluate its consequences with respect to the world. And is it better? And whoops, we were wrong. And now we're right. And we'll do this, you know, hey, it turns out just running around, chopping people's heads off and conquering places doesn't lead to the better world we thought it did. So we'll try something else. It's like saying it may be incredibly difficult to figure out what's the best design for a pen. Is it a feather from a bird that we just dip in some substance and squish around? Is it one where we sharpen the feather from the bird? Is it one where we make a slit and sharpen it so that you get a hollow thing to suck the ink up in so that it flows better? Is it better to actually do a roller ball or a gel ball? Is it better to, you can go through all these potential designs, and it can be trial and error. And what you can do is say, hey, I'd like a pen that doesn't leave a mess all over the paper, that writes smoothly and clearly, that is easy, that is efficient. You can have whatever criteria you want. And the pen that you create may be perfect for putting in your pocket, or it may be better suited on a desk that never goes in a pocket because you'll ruin your clothes. And there's no objective universal pen standard. And yet, despite that, we can know and learn a great deal about how to make a variety of different pens and make the world a better place. We got to wrap up here because the Sometimes Show is coming up, or at least that's what I saw in chat, and almost got a message up. Look, Jimmy's sending me notes. Blah, blah, blah. How many minutes? It's time for the Sometimes Show. Let me, first of all, say a huge thank you to everybody, and we'll wrap this up. Today, it's the Sunday show. And following this, the Sometime show. Jimmy will be here in just a minute. Tomorrow, Skeptalk with me and Aron Ra.
Run while you still can.
What's that?
Oh, you said Tuesday, Jimmy will be here in just a minute. I was saying run while you still can.
Yes. Tuesday's Dying Out Loud with Dave Warnock and Shannon Q. Wednesday's the Hang Up with me and Arden for her birthday. The birthday reptile awesomeness thing. Thursday's Transatlantic Calling Show with Katie and Arden. And next Sunday, Jimmy will be back for the Sunday show with me. Call screener today was Dragon. Thank you so much. Cookies and a Margin and all the others in chat who are moderating. Thank you. Thank you to everybody who called in, and to Forrest for agreeing to come in and do a Sunday show with me. I want to do more Sunday shows. And now we bid you all adieu, despite the fact that there's no objective purpose to the world, no objective morality, no meaning. Everything must be dour. You can't reason. You can't use language, even though it's something we invented. And language is 100% our bit to do with what we want. Set all that aside. Give up. It's all useless. Oh, wait. No, it's not. Patreon.com/call the line. We'll see you all later. Enjoy the Sometime show.